everybody. Welcome to another Puremix stay-at-home webinar. Today's going to be freaking awesome. We are joined by Angel Lopez and Fede Vindver. How are you guys doing?
Good.
How you doing?
Doing
Good,
good.
good.
This is
Yeah,
crazy.
thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. This is going to be really fun. So I guess we should start off. Let's just tell everybody what we're going to be doing today, and then we'll get into it.
All right, you want to
So
go ahead, Fed?
Sure. Well, how's everybody doing? We wanted to show, there's so many videos of people making tracks and making beats, but we were thinking, what can we show that's a little bit different? And so we were thinking maybe showing how we construct a sample, which is now a new thing, I guess, in the industry. A lot of people sending samples. When I say sample, I mean it's maybe small compositions that somebody can grab and chop and turn into a track, into a beat. So the way we do it, which a lot of people do, but maybe not enough people talk about it, is like sometimes we go from scratch. Whatever ideas come, we'll just go with it. And sometimes we just pick other samples. We pick songs that are online or anywhere really, and we start copying or making our own version of that other vibe. So the sample becomes kind of an inspiration, and maybe we copy a lot of things from it, but by the time we're done, it's just a whole new composition. But I think what it gives you that's different to making your own thing from scratch is that you're inviting somebody else's mind and talent into your thing, because we work a lot. I'm sure everybody that's watching this, we put a lot of hours. We're always making music. Eventually you're going to get to a point where you start maybe repeating yourself or going to things that you always do. But when you take another composition, now you're pretty much opening yourself to new ideas. Eventually, after doing that a bunch of times, they kind of become your own. And we discover with Angel working together for a very long time that in order to get a way of doing the same thing, we had to, bring more elements. And so this way of working, it proved pretty efficient for us. And we have done a bunch of these little samples this way and taking
yeah,
inspiration from other songs. So we're just going to
nice.
show you how to do it.
That's great. Cool. So before we get into it, I want to just take a minute and like talk about your backgrounds a little bit, and make sure that like for anybody who's joining that doesn't know you guys or know your work yet, that we explain a little bit of that. So first off, over here on your screen is Angel Lopez. This is a very old friend of mine. I'm extremely happy to have him on here. This is going to be insane.
Nah,
And
thank you.
yeah, below me on both sides here, we've got two angles on Fede. So you guys have had quite an exciting past couple of years. Um, the most recently, you guys wrapped up Kanye's newest record. You had some tracks on there, as well as the new Coldplay record, which is insane because I mean it's amazing. Like the Kanye record came out first, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. You're like, okay, I got some tracks on Kanye's record that's coming out, and usually it stops there. But then you guys did the whole like, hold my beer, here's Coldplay as well. Like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
So
it was a good moment.
yeah,
It was
so
definitely a good
those
moment.
the time frames are pretty similar on those too, right? Like were those both of those projects happening at the same time?
For the most part, I say so. For the
Yeah.
most part, with Kanye, we broke ground with him in December of 2018. Um, we were already working with Chris on a few things
Mhm.
um, that summer prior to. So, but they kind of went hand in hand,
Yeah, that's crazy.
which was it was a good ride.
Yeah, that's amazing. What's it like to switch, gears like that? Like you're working on a thing with Kanye. There's one style happening, and then you're working on a thing with Coldplay simultaneously. What do you guys do to like get in the right headspace when you're changing over projects like that? Anything in particular? Or?
Go Fed.
Um, it's different and it's similar in some ways because both those artists have an insane amount of energy into what they do, an insane
Mhm.
amount of commitment to making excellent, music, and they both work really hard into all the details that go into making a record. So in that sense, I think it was pretty similar. You pretty much have to switch gears a little bit in your mindset as far as what kind of record you're doing. Of course, with Coldplay, it was completely different vibe because it was based a lot on sound design and really working on, I don't know, a bunch of details into the songs they already written. Um, Maybe some stuff we started together, but it was pretty much something that they had already going. With Kanye was a little bit different because he had some songs already done that we jumped on, but then it was a lot of starting from scratch, new ideas. So I think that's different. And also when you're working on different projects, I'm sure this happened to Angel as well, but you kind of want to immerse yourself into that music and that vibe, and that's the hardest part. Is like if you're working with for a month and all you do is just be on mode and listening to music that's going to be appropriate for that project, that not necessarily doesn't have to be hip-hop, because with Kanye it's almost like such a universe of things that he does that you're into a lot of things, and then when you go into Coldplay, you're really switching gears in your head sonically and in a lot of different ways. But I think also once you get used to that, something that me and Angel have, and we always love having. I don't know why we do this. Maybe because we get bored about things quickly, but we like to work on a lot of different styles of music. And sometimes we're doing nothing but Latin music, and sometimes we go into doing the rock stuff or hip hop. So we are used to that change, But you need to spend some time doing your homework. I don't know, Angel. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's cool to brush up on the versatility thing, being able to like what Fed said, we'll go a week where we'll spend a bunch of Latin stuff and then go to the other side and it's just kind of brushing up on it. So when we get calls like that, we're able to make that transition and almost become like chameleons to what's happening.
Right.
It's because of the preparation that we do, and it's not even like, oh, we're gonna do it. It's just we like doing that.
Yeah.
And it's something that at least from our collaborations, it shows that we brush up on all sorts of different music, all sorts of different inspirations, and
yeah, and how things combine too is interesting, because then, for example, a lot of the sound design stuff that we might be doing for Coldplay, then we're working on Kanye, and we just use that knowledge into a Kanye record, and then Coldplay guys might say, "Oh, let's put a hard beat on this record," and it's like, "Oh, we're just doing that with yeah." So then different elements from different projects kind of start, going into the next thing, and that makes it really interesting because it's also hard to keep an open mind and a creative mind when you live in a landscape of, okay, this style of music require these type of sounds and this type of thing, and it's very square and rigid in some ways. Like for instance, you're doing reggaeton or trap, it's like a certain amount of sounds you're gonna use for that. But I think when you're open and doing all these different things, now you're like, hey, why I can't just use, a weird atmospheric sound that I will use for Coldplay on a Kanye record or a trap record, and vice versa. Let's put some rock guitars on hip hop, and I think that's also pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the versatility is incredible between the two of you. It's just nuts. Well, let's go back. We'll do like a quick synopsis. Like we got obviously a lot to do today, so we'll go quick through this. But let's talk about your backgrounds real quick. Fede, let's start with you. Like, how'd you get into music, and what ultimately led you to Los Angeles?
Well, started in elementary school, just playing piano and lessons and trying to just do music, I think. And then as soon as I played my first C major on the piano, I feel like, oh, life changed. That's it. That's what I want to do, which I think is a spirit that is really hard to keep for all of us at the same time. It's just that first moment, of inspiration, of the first time you made a sound that seemed great to you, and that's where that it's almost like that high you chase over and over. It's almost like people that do drugs are like, oh, the first high is the first, and then you're chasing that high. Well, that's thing is, music is the same thing. So started playing keys and other instruments, and I was playing some jazz in Argentina. Then big economic crisis in Argentina, a lot of people started leaving the country. And for me, I was like, oh, I need to leave too. I ended up going to Spain first, stay there. I was probably 18, 19 at the time. Then I moved to Mexico, and then I just went to United States because they had a pretty good music school, University of Miami, and I was that was kind of the only way you can actually get in the U.S. as an Argentine at the time. There was no visas; they prohibited all visas for Argentines because a lot of people was going there illegally. So I went to school. I went there for 4 years as a jazz major. Although I wasn't really doing a lot of jazz, I just started discovering, production through first being a studio musician, and then you see producers and engineers, and you kind of want to learn how to do it yourself. And then that's the way I got into it. Just started touring with a bunch of people after I finished school, or also while I was in school. So I was a touring musician for years until eventually I really got tired of the road and I wanted to create, and that was kind of my passion. And I left playing live and just started doing a lot of production. And then I met my wife actually on the road. She's from Los Angeles, and that's how I ended up moving to LA. And I mean, pretty quickly, as soon as I moved to LA, I got, a manager and started getting gigs and producing. And then I was producing a band that Timbaland signed, and they told me, okay, go to the studio to work with Tim. And when I went to the studio, Angel was there, and we really hit it off. I think from the first session, it was amazing because we had great chemistry in the studio and great admiration for each other's talents. And I think it just complemented real well. We did a few sessions, I think that week, maybe like one or two more sessions, and it was just great. I mean, we had like great chemistry, and at that time, I think like Timbo liked what I was doing, Angel liked what I was doing, our manager Gary, he was loving what I was doing as well. And then, at a party he told me like, hey, I want to sign you want to sign with me? And ended up signing. So now we had the same management, and we just started doing gigs together with Timbaland basically, and we haven't stopped till now.
Amazing. Yeah, such a cool story. Nice. All right, Angel, you're up.
So so me, I started with guitar. I think I was about 10 years old. My stepfather at the time, he played with this band in Tijuana, Mexico, the Moonlights, and my mom started singing in a cover band that they did. So that's where I started getting my musical roots from. So I started with the guitar, and then we moved to Ohio when I was 10, and he started teaching me guitar in a very strict manner. He was, I think I told my mom like, hey, I'm going to teach your son to the point that he'll come back to it alone. So I spent about maybe a month with that guy every day on me, started learning the guitar. And then I remember at an uncle's house, he had acid loops, or what was it called? Acid
Pro.
I forgot. Yeah, acid, something like that, where you put loops. And that's where I started experimenting with loops and like, oh, this is cool. You could move these little blocks and make sounds. And then I just started, I remember watching this clip of Timbaland. My friend Antonio, he had this clip of the classic Timbaland in the prep room with the Kool-Aid, with the gallon of Kool-Aid. It looks like Kool-Aid, and him just like vibing and doing the head. And I was like, wow, I really want to learn how to make that type of music. Like the beats were crazy. Timbaland's music was absolutely insane. By then I was already fully dove into the guitar with went to a Carlos Santana concert that that was like the moment Fede described from him hitting the keys with me. It was like watching that man play guitar. I was like, wow, that's incredible. Mm-hmm. So I kept on pushing that. I had my mom get me a Triton LE and some Yamaha speakers, and I started learning how to produce. I would run it to Cool Edit. I think it's Adobe Audition now, but it was very similar to Cool Edit. And no quantize, no nothing, just making stuff on the fly. And then I met this cool guy named Mark Abrams who started helping me with all the questions that I had. I would call Mark for everything. We did a couple gigs in some churches with like 3 people in the crowd, and that we started a cool friendship. But Mark was always brushing me up and teaching me things. Mark was already, I think you were already like doing engineering, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I
you
met
were
you right at
already.
the beginning of all of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, right around the same time. Uh, so that happens, and then I ended up doing this cool thing with Latin artists, and I came to California. I was like 16. I did a few big shows with him. Went back to Ohio, and then Timbaland discovered me on Instagram, and that started that relationship. Um, and that was it. Fast forward to the day where I meet Fed, and yeah, it was pretty flawless. The chemistry is undeniable. I think sometimes you meet people like that even like beyond the values of music and the admiration of music, just like the values as human being, uh, like transcend that, and you're like, oh, like this is cool. It's effortless. It becomes an effortless thing.
Mhm.
And ever since, yeah, we've been rocking with each other. We've been rocking with Tim. And then from there, we just started developing, our own thing and building relationships. And it's kind of this cool space now where we all get to work with each other on things. Sometimes we do things individually, but for the most part, we're working together, and that's pretty much it. And here we
Yeah,
are.
it's amazing. Yeah, crazy. Well, yeah, one other fun thing too, like shout out for like your master class that you guys did with Timberland. It's pretty cool because that was the first time I think that I saw Fede working with you guys. So that
Yeah.
whole thing is pretty cool to watch too. Like
Yeah,
it's neat
yeah.
seeing
We
you
get a
guys
lot of
there.
feedback from that.
Yeah,
We're happy
yeah,
people have enjoyed it.
yeah. So I want to talk about that for 1 second. So you like the first time that you told me about your workflow with Timberland and Fede and everything, like how you guys work when you go into a studio. Um, it was to me it like blew my mind because it was this whole like obviously like people come in with laptops to studios now and like you see the typical joke. It's like the SSL is the world's most expensive laptop stand or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But you guys have a unique way of working that's not really the case. So like if anybody's seen a picture of that or like if you've seen the master class back on the producer tables, you've got Timberland set up. In like when you guys are all on a session together, you got Timberland set up, Angel set up, and Fede set up. You guys are all running separate rigs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're pretty much we like to call it like a big laptop jam session. So
yeah.
it's like our laptops are the instrument, and we're running live to where either Chris, Tim's longtime engineer, or our engineer David, who
Hmm.
also works with Tim a lot, and he's doing amazing things, and he'll be driving on Pro Tools, but we're constantly just feeding stuff live.
Yeah,
Um, and he's chopping and arranging and making basic arrangements as we go. So it's pretty interesting. It
yeah,
was actually funny that we realized like maybe I don't know, but I don't remember seeing a lot of people doing it. When people would come see us what we're working, they're like, oh, you're doing that. It'd kind of be
yeah.
like, like kind of confused.
Of
Usually I
course.
guess you send stuff, headphones, but this was like, no, live.
Right, right.
Tim's got a drum beat going and Fed's on there doing keys. I'm finding a sample and we're
Yeah,
grabbing the stuff that's there and flipping that. Like, it's pretty
yeah.
cool.
So, like to break down the signal flow of that, who are the engineers' names, like first and last, so people can look them up and stuff.
Oh,
It's
Chris Godby and
yep,
David Rodriguez.
nice, cool. So let's say like Tim starts something out. Is that then tracked into Pro Tools at that point while you guys are working on other stuff?
I mean, it depends. Sometimes he's tracking it and then we work on what he tracked, but a lot of times he's
Mhm.
just pressing play on something
Yeah,
and then we actually ask, hey, what's the tempo? And then we get the same tempo. And that's a question a lot of people ask is like, oh, what do you use to sync? Is like, we just sync by counting and hitting play at the same time,
dang,
which is
yeah,
actually one of the cool things about Ableton, that it has a pretty, it doesn't give you a lot of latency. When you hit play, it just
just
goes.
goes. Yeah,
Um, so we kind of like, once we get to syncing with him, let's say he has an 8-bar loop, you wait for your eight bars and then you hit the one. Now you're in sync with him, and we could kind of jam on our headphones first, and then when we find a sound that we're like, oh, this is dope, we unmute our interface, and then it comes in the speakers and it's mixed with him.
yeah,
An interesting thing that happens a lot is working with Angel, and me, and this guy Rance 1500, which is an amazing producer from Los Angeles, is that a lot of times we might be in headphones for, let's say, 5 minutes, dialing in sounds, and then we kind of all unmute at the same time, and it's usually great. Like, we don't step on each other's sounds. I don't know
yeah,
how, but I guess we all kind of know what everybody's gonna do, and we don't do what the other person usually does in some ways, you know. So we find a lot of like space. That's important. I think it's just leaving space for the other person. So sometimes you might add a sound that it only comes at the end of the bar 16, you know. And then when we unmute, the engineer is recording already, so everything goes in,
Yeah.
and so it kind of like comes already pretty arranged, and then everything gets run through the SSL usually, which might give us a little bit of an added sound to what we do. And then once, you know, maybe we have a writer, he goes in, and then after that, we'll just go and edit all that. And sometimes there's like a bunch of ideas that we throw in, and then it's just a matter of picking what are we going to use and what we're not going to use. But yeah, it's pretty unusual but fun way to make music.
Oh, it's incredibly fast too, because you guys, like the way Angels described it to me too, you'll have like a top liner working on ideas while you guys are working on the next part of the track in your cans, but they're in there tracking vocals with the engineer, whatever.
Yep.
So everybody's still working and not tied to just one system waiting for things to free up or for like the top line to go down or something like that, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, sometimes even we have more producers, like the Mosley brothers, two guys from Delaware. They're amazing that work with us, and we might have, I don't know, 5-6 producers, and sometimes everybody's kind of working on their own thing, and it's a matter of like, you know, you go and like, oh, somebody tells you, oh, check this out, and then you listen to it, you're like, oh, this is fire, and then, oh, I have a sound for you, send me that, and then sometimes we actually send it, and then we play it with everybody's sound, but everything gets created in silent mode. The writers might be writing, and there might be a bunch of people in the studio, and no one really knows that we are actually working on new tracks, and we might have already 3 new ideas to play while we're finishing another one. So
yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's almost like I remember when the first session we did with Kanye, when he saw that workflow, because the Mosley brothers were there with us, and we had Michael Dirtwork, Fede, and myself, Tim, and when he started singing, he's like, oh, y'all are like a factory.
Right.
You know, because it was like boom, 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 and it's pretty cool. It's pretty seamless, and it's actually a lot of fun. Because like Fed said, I think one of the most important parts is knowing your room and knowing, you know, leaving room for your other people. Because we're well aware. I think what makes us good at what we do is not necessarily like, oh, the talent. It's just the awareness and knowing the space in the room, and that's something we do very well. We know when to, you know, hey, Fed, I need something like this. And Fed's incredible at translating, or he'll be like, Angel, can you do this? So we know each other's space. And sometimes without even communicating, like he said, we just play it, and it's all of a sudden it's harmonious, as if we were listening to each other in the cans, you know?
Right.
It's pretty seamless.
Yeah, it's insane. Ableton has a link feature, right? That would do sync like that. Isn't there like an Ableton Jam feature? I'm not super familiar with Ableton, but
yes. Yeah, and it's great. Link. But we haven't, I mean, we've used it occasionally, but with Tim, usually it was just like Fed said, it was hitting play on the spot, you know, with the push, with the Ableton push, you're able to hit, and it's almost like you're triggering on the spot. And it's easier to do it that way.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
Especially because the driving, you know, it's going straight into Pro Tools, as opposed to, you know, let's sync up. We're able to hit play, and maybe a lot of times this happens too, where Tim will hit play on one of his beats, and the one ends up becoming a different measure in the beat, and it's like, oh, that sounds crazy. And you know, you allow for room for those things to happen, as opposed to just being locked into the grid like that.
Time. Right.
Yeah. So you get, you know, I might hit play in the wrong bar, and I messed up, and Fed might be like, oh, that actually works amazing in that bar, and it's all of a sudden you have this new way looking at the part you just created.
Yeah, that's insane. When you guys, when you're, you know, like the 3 of you knowing each other like super well and everything, and you have, let's say, like you have a top liner that you work with a lot, how quick is it for you guys to create a track?
I mean, man,
it varies.
It depends on who we're working with.
Yeah.
It varies a lot. It's no, my bad. I mean, sometimes it's Fed on the keys, and he'll hit something, or it'll be like a guitar, or Fed will jump on the guitar, and I'll be on the, like, it really depends, but typically it's pretty fast. It's like you come up with the chord progression, and then the artist goes in there, gives you a basic top line, and then we're already on headphones working on the beat, You know, Fed might be doing drums, or I might be doing drums. He's adding more musical elements, and it's typically, it really depends who we're working with and the type of song. But for the most part, I find it it's usually pretty fast.
Nice.
I don't know.
It's fast. I think even to get the initial idea and inspiration and get it going, it can be extremely fast. It can be like less than a minute. There's already a dope idea and everybody's adding, and 5 minutes later, there's something that might sound like the final version already. And then some other times we take our time too, you know, if we're working more in a more traditional way of like, let's play chords and make a song, which is also the other part that's fun, that we don't necessarily have always the same method of work. I mean, we really change it constantly, you know, the way we do things. And that kind of keeps it fresh too. It's easy to get on the same patterns if you're always repeating the same way you work. So that's something that we were able to do. And I mean, honestly, sometimes pushing ourselves to like, okay, today let's just do it this other way, you know. So that works pretty good.
Just to switch it up, yeah. Awesome. Well, there's going to be a bunch of questions at the end of all this from people in the chat room. Everybody who's watching on Crowdcast, right below the video, there's a section that says Ask a Question. Put your questions in there and upvote other people's questions that you want to see get answered. And we're going to come back and hit those at the end. But let's make some music. So
let's do it.
Yeah. So Fede and Angel are obviously in different locations right now, and we actually had a question in there about what we're using to make all this happen. So obviously, like, we're able to see screens and all that. There's going to be screen sharing between Fede and Angel, so they can see kind of what's happening on here. We're using Zoom, so to hear everything, we're using audio movers. So both Angel and Fede have an audio movers instance set up so that they can hear each other. And you guys are going to use a Dropbox workflow, correct?
Correct.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, how are we starting out?
So like Fed said, we decided to show, you know, the process that we do of going into something that's there already and just turning it into ourselves. So Fed actually found this cool sample, and we'll play it. That way you guys kind of hear, and then we'll go from there and just start jamming ideas and figuring out.
Awesome.
You know, just see what happens.
Perfect. Cool. So Fed, can we
from my system or? Yeah,
you can play it from yours, Fed.
All right, let me just share screen. How's that? Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
All right. So we found the sample. Please let me know if there's any connection issues.
Cool.
Sometimes we go into all kinds of places like YouTube or, you know, Spotify or Wikipedia and just find things. We found this thing.
I just can't seem to understand what I have to say to make you realize that each and every day I live for you, girl.
So that seems something that we might want to work on.
Awesome.
So the first thing maybe we'll do, let's see, maybe some tempo. Sorry, my computer might be like a little bit slower than usual.
I got like 135.
This is 134.
Awesome.
So usually, well, let me just take a listen. I don't know already the choruses. I can see what keys it is. You might know. So that was like. Something like that. So what I'll start thinking is like, how can I make my own version of that? So first thing maybe I'll do is, or maybe I'll do it later. I'll change the key. That already just, you know, puts you in a different perspective. But for now, I'm just gonna stay on that. and see what can we do.
What tempo you end up going with?
134.
Perfect.
What do you think about that? I usually get feedback from Angel, so I'm insecure.
Play it again.
Because I was thinking instead of going to the second. Oh, that's good. I really like this thing, that rhythm, you know. So it could be something like that. Let me see. Oh, let's turn this one off. I have an extra button. So my computer seems to be acting up.
We're asking a lot of our computers these days. So.
So yeah, I think my computer might not love what's going on, but we'll still try to make it happen.
Screen sharing gets a little taxing, but
yeah, I see that.
Yeah. So, Fed, you had the click going with that too, right?
I have the click. It's like you guys can't hear it because Ableton might put it on a different output.
Right. Yeah, that was just kind of what I wanted to tell everybody. Was Ableton routes it a little funny. So.
All right. Let me see if I can close some stuff. Close Safari. And what do you think about that, Angel?
I love it, bro. I'm actually trying to get just a basic groove of that going. Do you want to check?
I was gonna actually put a little hi-hat.
Nice.
What was this thing doing? Hold on.
I just can't seem to understand what I have to say to make you realize.
See, just put in some scratch drums that you'll hear by the end. Like we might not even use this. It's just like, let's try that. Hold on. Let's do it again with a click. So let's give it a little enticing, maybe not all the way. And sometimes they sound good. Let's see. Not too much. And the way you're probably gonna end up doing this is taking this Wurlitzer maybe out at the end, because might not be the sound that we want to use. I'm sure with electric guitar, it's gonna work better in the end. but at least that's marking sort of the chorus and the overall vibe of this. And I think what I might do is add a little bit of the bass line, and then I'm gonna pass it to Angel, and he'll probably do some crazy guitar stuff in it. And I think once we have sort of a rhythm section on this, we can add maybe some strings, maybe some horns, maybe synth.
Awesome. So right now you're kind of thinking that you'll follow that same Motown-ish vibe.
Yeah, I think we're going to do that and try to make it sound like a sample, you know, as much as we can. So give me 1 second. I'm going to grab my bass.
Nice. Nice. Kenneth in the chat says, "Where's Oprah when you need her? You get a Mac Pro. You get a Mac Pro."
Man, that's too good. I'm gonna steal that joke. Okay, so let me just remember what I did. Oh, I just tuned my bass on for a different song on a weird tune. It's live TV, guys. I gotta tune live.
That's right. This is the tuning song.
Exactly.
I love this one. You guys had a lot of success with it, right?
All right,
It's like
let's see.
a top 10.
Yeah. I'm just got it from right here. That was different. I think I did something like that. And again, we're trying to be very fast on this, so we're not going to be too refined. My computer is the mic. Looking here. Well, maybe we need a little bit of talking in between, so while my computer reacts. Yeah.
Cool.
See what I can. That's nothing that, I mean, what sucks about Ableton, one of the only thing that sucks about Ableton, really can get super slow sometimes. When I use Logic, it wasn't like that. So basically we have this that sounds like nothing. It might not be great, but it will be pretty good once we add other parts and develop it more. Just start in loop. And then eventually what's really fun is when you start, I mean, we'll show more about later, but just to give a quick preview, I mean, when you start like repitching this stuff, you know, now it starts sounding more like a sample, which will do way more things. And usually also we'll have singers that can help us. I mean, maybe we'll record a quick vocal thing in it just to have something, but what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna save these. This is how we work with Angel, like, so let me open my Dropbox real fast. Dropbox takes a lot of the bandwidth, so hopefully it's not a problem, but we have a Dropbox together. So let's say I'm working on this. I'm gonna save as new Puremix, and I'm gonna put my initial in it and save it. And this is gonna save on our Dropbox. So Angel has his Dropbox open, so he's gonna get an automatic update with this version. Another thing that I didn't do, I'm going to do now, is when you share stuff on Ableton, it's really good to like just freeze everything.
Hmm.
So I want to freeze that stuff just in case he doesn't have. I mean, we have almost all the same plugins, but if there's something he's missing or a sound that I recorded, and Ableton can be tricky with this. And I also gonna use the collect all and save feature on Ableton, so it makes sure he gets all the sounds that I just did.
Yeah, so let's tell people what that means. So when you do collect all
we'll
and
take it from
save,
there. I'm sure the guitar is gonna lift it up, and then after he'll do his guitar and sounds that he's gonna add to it.
awesome. And collect all and save is just kind of grabbing any samples
Yeah,
that
go
you
ahead.
used and putting them into the project, or the internet is trying to kill Fed.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes if you import another sound from outside into Ableton, hopefully it'll get better. But if you import another sound, Ableton might not copy that file, just reference the location of the file. But when you do a collect all and save, that's when I'm gonna grab this. And now my freeze actually, I don't know if you guys can still see me, but it's like stuck right now.
Yeah.
And the reason why, another thing to keep aware is like sometimes if the plugin has a little bit of noise, Ableton doesn't stop. So a way to remedy that, sometimes it's just like automate this thing going off.
Oh, gotcha.
Probably there's a better solution, but I never bothered looking.
We'll see if the Hive Mind has any ideas in the chat room.
And let's try to freeze it again. Yeah, I mean, I haven't found any other way, because if you have a plugin that has, like a lot of plugins, which kind of sucks that some plugins have so much noise that you can't turn off. I mean, you can on the wave stuff, but hey, it's doing it again.
Like,
so in this case, what I'll do, Angel, you have Keyscape and Easy Drummer Hip Hop, right? Well, there's another workaround, of course. I mean, I can just do audio tracks. No, I was saying, do you have Easy Drummer Hip Hop or Keyscape? I think you do.
I don't have Easy Drummer. I think if you freeze it and you do and commit it, that might be the easier thing.
Okay, so let's do something. Can we maybe stop the screen share for a minute, and I'll do this, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about the process. So, because I think it's going to help the computer. It's acting a little bit weird with the screen share.
Yep. Trying to reset your video as well. There we go. Angel, I just sent you a video request. I was trying to get it to reset.
All right.
Cool. So we have screen share going. We have 2 instances of audio movers, Zoom, broadcasting, and all that. So quite a bit of stuff. Nice. Sorry, we got Angel's video back.
All right. So you guys probably can see it, but I just recorded the Easy Drummer into an audio.
Nice.
And everything else I know you're gonna have. I'm gonna do a collect all and save.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's gonna basically save this in Dropbox, which is probably not gonna take too long because it's a small session.
Right.
So now, yeah, we'll just gonna get in a minute.
So while
it uploads, I was gonna say you could go through some of the questions maybe.
Yeah. So let's see. So we answered that one. So what are some of your favorite editing features and shortcuts to fasten up the workflow? So to speed things up. Do you guys have a specific, like, I don't know, any specific crazy Ableton shortcuts that people might not know about?
There is some things. you want to go first, Angel, or you want me to?
You could go ahead. I think to me the biggest thing that I love is being able to create sounds and save them at just group things, and
Yeah.
just being able to save them and be able to recall them. Like I have this folder called sauces, and like I know when to go into them, and I think that's probably it for me. I don't know, as far as shortcuts, Fed tends to have some cool tricks on that, but that makes it easy for me to be able to recall. I love being able to recall things I've already done before, and pull them up whenever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can kind of assign your own way of working, which is cool. For example, something that I have is, well, we both use the push controller.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see it, but if you open a plugin, I mean, it will map everything that plugin can do in here. So it kind of is a seamless way, because sometimes you don't want to, at least I don't want to be looking at the screen constantly. I want to just listen to music and vibe. So
Right.
something that I did enabled, and you could have this thing called track defaults. So when you create a track, it's gonna have whatever you put on the default. So you can put like a whole chain of effects, and every time you make, let's say, a new audio track, you get that. So what I did, for example, is I put an EQ, and I assigned the high pass and the low pass filter to a knob, and I also have a phase thing assigned to a knob, panning, gain, all these different things that I always do, because most of the times, I think for everybody, you're working, you're gonna use some kind of filter, low pass or high pass, phase, gain, and instead of having to add a plugin to just do that, I assign it to my default track. So when my thing opens and everything is spanned on these knobs, so if I'm like, oh, it has too much low end, I just touch this knob. I don't have to go open an EQ or anything. I also have a thing that's like a widening. I mean, basically, it's a widener that comes with Ableton. It's like in the utility, there's a thing called wider mix. Basically, it's like an MS thing. You can make your stereo thing a little more open or closer, close, and I just have it all assigned into these 8 knobs. And same with gain, because sometimes I feel like if I'm doing it with the mouse, it's harder. Like if I want to like level stuff up, I like having a knob. I'm not having to look at the screen. I'm panning, gain, high and low pass. I'll say 99% of the time, all I'm doing is using gain, panning, high pass, and low pass. I
Right.
almost feel like if you have to do a lot more than that, maybe you're not using the right sound, or
Mm.
maybe you should look for something different. Um, Maybe that's a whole other conversation, but I think it's good to leave stuff as unprocessed as possible when you can. And I think those are things that I enjoy. And then I have this little controller that I use that I assign basically the tuning of a sample here and the level of a sample here. So when I import a sample into the computer, usually I'm playing with the pitch. I want to turn it up or down. Like you say, you put a snare. It's like, okay, I want to tune it. So I have it here. I don't have to think about it or look at it. I think when you have things
Right.
set up on that way, where you're almost playing an instrument and you know where everything is, it
Mm-hmm.
makes you work way faster. So you
Right.
can do it on Ableton.
That's awesome. What's that controller that you have there with all the knobs?
It's like a
Right.
MIDI fighter. It's called.
Cool.
It's just
Yeah.
knobs. I mean, I guess you can use anything that has knobs.
Yeah.
When you can actually push the knobs and it do a different function, so you can have,
Mm.
like this will do something, and then if I push it and move it, does something different. So,
Awesome.
like for example, you can tune something, and when I have it in blue, let's say that might be semitones, and when I push it, that might be like fine tuning, and that might be like less. But like I said, it's usually the same. I try to look into what are the things that I almost always do when I'm producing, like,
Yeah.
which not because I'm trying to repeat myself, but it's just normal stuff that we all gonna do. We're gonna level stuff, we're gonna pan stuff. Usually we're gonna, filter highs or lows, tune things. So I like to have those tools so close that I don't even have to ever think about it. And I guess you could do the same thing with other DAWs, but Ableton makes it really easy, to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. We had Andrew Shepson a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about something called SoundFlow. which like the chat room like lit up because all of us were like, wait, you can do what? And basically this thing is it's a macro editor, so you can actually get pretty crazy and write JavaScript scripts for it. But you could do things like if you have like a Stream Deck or something with like just buttons on it, they could be MIDI CC buttons. You can execute macros. So you might have a workflow where you're like, I want you to create like 4 instrument tracks and like put Easy Drummer on this one, put whatever keyscape on this one, and so on and so forth. You can program that down to a macro, so where you sit down, you just hit one button and all these things happen, whatever. So it could be everything like freeze all tracks and then like collect all and save, and all of that could be a script that you like execute from a button. It's kind of fun.
That's actually cool. I've seen a few things that do that, but what happens, I think, with me, I don't know, always is when it gets a little too complex, I notice that I use it for 2 days and then I don't use it again. You know, it's almost like it has to be the most simple, dumbest thing ever for me to like stick to it, you know, and do it. But that sounds like actually might be super interesting to check out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, well, how long did it take to set up versus how much time did it save you in the long run? But
yeah, nowadays, I used to use templates that have a bunch of stuff in it. And nowadays I'm starting to go with the simplest template or thing that you can think of, where it's just basically my shortcuts, because I find it that I work faster that way. I don't know why. I think it just started getting cluttered with things in the template that I'm not using necessarily. And also, I like starting from scratch. Maybe if you're a mixer, that's probably better to have a good template. But, you know, I guess we all change.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Let's see. How you doing, Angel?
I think it's uploaded.
Awesome.
Are
you gonna do a screen share and all that?
Yeah. Can you guys hear the audio?
Yep.
Amazing. It would be cool to find a soul sample, Fed, like a vocal or something.
Okay,
you have a lot of
work on that.
Cool ones. Yeah. I like that line. I might just grab it very quick.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I'll do this as well. I like to start hearing the how it'll sound pitched as well, because that's ultimately that's what we'll do. We'll grab this and pitch it and color it and do all sorts of things. But I like getting an idea, just so we don't overdo, you know, the music part of it. Because the goal with this is going to be to grab it and possibly put a beat on it by the time we're done with whatever this musical piece is.
That might have to go before listen to for us to get it.
Oh yeah, my bad. So I'm getting my guitar and I'm gonna add these slight things. I like doing this a lot, and then we might use maybe one part of it, or maybe we won't use it at all. But I like.
Do you have some pedals going down there?
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey, should you record that actually at the original pitch?
Oh yeah, snap. Good catch. All right, let me get rid of the plug-in. Actually sounds cool. So I'm gonna start just thinking of arrangement very quick. Second, got a little tangled right here.
Rocky in the chat is calling this the alien Hawaiian guitar.
What is it?
Rocky in the chat is calling this the alien Hawaiian guitar.
Yes.
You have to save it as
I like doing that.
patch.
It's yeah, that's actually, I mean, the first time I ever heard it, it was at that Santana concert I was speaking about earlier. It was like in 2004. He had this record called Victory Is Won, and he did that, and I was like, what is that? And I wasn't, you know, back then, like, my knowledge about music. I was so, I'm a Mexican guy, and I was brought up in a Mexican home with a Mexican mom that played mariachi all the time. So that's all I knew. I didn't know rock or anything. So when I saw the electric guitar and saw all of that, I was like, whoa. And he started doing this crazy slide thing, And ever since, I like using it and stuff, because when you end up pitching the sample, it's just a nice color. You're like, what was that? Call it like dolphins or whales. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I like that. The alien guitar. That's cool.
That's great. What pedals are you using on that?
So I'm using the Rainbow Machine, Earthquaker. Earthquaker, actually, we have a relationship with them, and they hooked up Fed and I with a bunch of amazing pedals.
Nice.
And then I'm running my Blues Breaker, a Marshall Blues Breaker, which is a pedal use. I wish I had my phone set up too. It's a classic. It's almost like a overdrive pedal, but it's not too harsh. And I bought it because I'm a huge fan of John Mayer's guitar tone, and he always has it running, and that's one of the ones. And that's it. And I'm running my Big Sky with a light reverb on.
Nice. Great tone.
So yeah, it's pretty straight. I'm not even using guitar rig. Lately I've been using more just direct signal and then trying to go from there, unless there's a particular thing I know I could get from guitar rig. But other than that, I like it, just straight. I don't know. It sounds good.
That's cool.
Fed, did you end up being able to freeze?
No, I wasn't able to freeze, but everything sounded like I had it here.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna see if I could just freeze it so far and see what happens.
So while you're freezing, Fede, tell everybody what's happening on your end while he's working on this.
Well, right now, actually, my session froze, so I'm restarting it. But before that, I was adding some vocal stuff, and I was about to actually put a little bit of a string thing in it. I mean, sometimes we might do, I'm thinking, for example, on the vibe of this sample. That's another thing. You kind of have to imagine what, if it was a real sample, what sounds, will be appropriate for what this era in our minds is. And I was thinking about maybe adding some synths, but I don't know. I feel like it's not going to be appropriate for, I think it's more like an organic thing on this. So I was just trying to put a few vocals from different samples that I found, and trying to see about maybe incorporating some strings and some horns if my computer lets me do it. Yeah. Usually if it's a situation where we're together in the room, a lot of this stuff will be happening real time. Sometimes if we're together, we might work in one computer, and maybe we'll have a guitar connected, keyboards connected, and we just send in everything,
Right.
I'm doing it that way, you know what I mean?
This might sound like trash, but yep, not the right patch. I have these sounds. We started working with this producer named Jasper, and he's the king of like one shots and making patches out of one shots. So it's cool to I've been doing that a lot more. I know Fed, a lot of people I'm sure do it, but Jasper's really the guy. We were at the studio with him, and he's like, we're like, so what plugins do you use or what? And he's like, oh no, he was walking around. What was it, Fed? Like a Casio keyboard?
Yeah, like a Kanye.
Yeah, it was and he was just hitting a one shot, and then he'd get that and come up with the craziest sounding patch, and that's how the guy does it. He's like, I remember he hit us up when he got Keyscape. He was like, oh my goodness, like this is unbelievable. But we're like, dude, you're great without it. It's insane. So
Right.
I wanted to see if this patch worked, but it doesn't work with the chords.
I think we should probably keep it also like as organic as possible, for this kind of sample.
going through random. It's not the right key though. What's the right? Grab that. Fed, you want to check if that uploaded on your site already? That we could be working on.
Yeah, honestly, my computer is, my session is actually frozen.
Nice. You guys want to take a question while you're loading up?
Yeah, let's take a few questions.
Yeah, let's do that.
I have vocals already that I added to it, but I'm trying to add the strings, and that's what the thing is like not working right.
Cool. So this is a pretty good question here from Drew. Does your physical location or your city dictate the genre you typically work on? Meaning, are there more opportunities in specific genres due to your location?
Maybe when we're in Miami. I mean, not really though. You know, Miami is like the Latin hub right now, but I don't know how you feel about it. I don't think so. I think it's pretty.
No, general. I mean, I think like not in particular. I feel like, of course, Miami feels like it's super. Everything is Latin and a little bit of hip hop and not much more than that. And I think, you know, Brooklyn has a crazy, you know, weird rock scene and all kinds of, and you know, New York has jazz. But I think for us, we never felt that way about a particular city of doing any particular style. You know, it just kind of works the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for some people are like these days. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you guys feel
you
like
save it, Angel? Sorry, my bad.
Oh no, you're good. Go ahead. You guys are doing.
No, it's Angel. You save this with another name.
Yeah, it should be. Give me 1 second. It should be A. If you open A, it should have put those in there.
Here's another good one from Drew. So, Angel, I happen to know you're a former Logic addict. There from back in the day. So Drew's asking, do you foresee having a use for the new Live Loops update in Logic Pro X?
I'll be honest, I have not looked at that yet. Fed actually comes from Logic as well. Like, nice. That's what he was on until we started working with Tim. And we obviously did the switch just because the workflow, you know, we were talking about earlier, but I haven't checked it out. I'm in a few like group chats with producers and everybody's talking about it. I have to check it out.
Yeah. Well, how about in Ableton? Do you guys use the loop feature much?
Which loop feature?
Like if you tab over, so this is the arrange window, right? And then the other window is, I forget what it's called.
Oh, the clip. You're talking about clip view.
Clips. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So typically when we're starting a beat, at least for me, it depends on what it is. If it's something like this, I like working like this because you're thinking more arrangement, more
linear
across. Mm-hmm. Yeah, more linear. And when it's this, it's like I'll come up. You can still see my screen, right?
Yeah.
I'll start clips and I literally do my whole arrangement here before I go to the other side. Mm-hmm. So I have, say, kick, drum pattern here, or no, let's just say keyboard here. And then I'll duplicate the keyboard riff, and then I'll have the drums right here, the bass, et cetera, et cetera. And I just start building my arrangement on this. I love it. Personally, it's my favorite workflow. And then I'll take it to the other side and go, dive deeply into the arrangement. But other than that, I like jamming it like that. And what I'll do is I'll trigger it live into my arrangement mode. A lot of people are like, oh, that's a waste of time. But I like hitting the push and hitting the keys and hitting the different clip view arrangements I've done. And seeing what happens. Sometimes I hit the wrong one and it's like, oh, that's cool. It went there.
Nice.
Yeah. But I have not checked out the Logic one. I don't go back to Logic that often. I know Fed does. There's a few, I feel like working with Fed this long now, there's a few sounds. He's such an incredible sound designer. There's a few signature sounds he has. And there will be times like, yo, remember the wobble sound from the first session? And it's this one sound he has that he made and could only happen in Logic. And he'll go and grab it, or, it's just, I start building this library of sounds that he has in Logic. And I know Fed, you could probably talk about that more than I can, but I know Fed does go back to Logic and I don't
Yeah,
find myself
absolutely. I
ever
mean, there's a
sounding.
lot of sounds that I have from years of work in there that I saved, and of course, I try to use them if I have to. Now I have a new library that I built, in Ableton, but that's that's mainly the reason why I will go back and use. Sometimes I use, Logic, but I haven't really checked the new thing. Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt for a second, Angel. I think the session that I'm trying to open, when I open it up, it only really has one sound, like this drum thing, but it doesn't have any. Are you sure you uploaded the stuff?
It should be uploaded. Let's see. Oh, I think I was missing the collect all. I only did it with that. Try it again.
Okay. While we open that, I mean, I haven't checked out the new Logic thing. I've seen a little bit of it, but I think they're obviously trying to catch up with Ableton as far as even the new sampler and everything else. But to be honest, I think I'm becoming less and less trying to check out new stuff lately, because I feel that everybody's using so much the same sounds and the same techniques, and the splice sounds and all that, that it's almost defeating the purpose of, like, we have all these different options, but I feel a lot of people kind of use the same exact thing the same way. So that's why I've been more inclined. Maybe this is not the greatest example now what we're doing, because we're at home and we don't using. Sometimes we go to studios that have a lot of vintage instruments that we can use. But here I've been using a lot of hardware synths, and really forcing myself to only use hardware stuff lately, just out of trying to see if I can push the sound design into something different from what everybody else is doing. And we get a lot of sounds from people, like they send us samples all the time, different producer friends, and what we always talk about is, like, they really sounds very similar, even on the processing too. Like, you can tell everybody's using the same exact plugins. So I feel it's nice to not going with the trend too. When it's obvious that when something new comes out, everybody's gonna go and buy that and use it. But I almost feel like I try to go back and use something old or something that no one heard, you know just to, like, go against the grain a little bit and not end up with the same sound.
Yeah.
But I think that's actually something that Timbaland always, I feel, he does. Is like, he's very unusual in the sounds that he uses and how he processes it, and he's always trying not to sound like anybody else.
Right. Right. Let's see. So this one is for Fede. This is from Ivo. And he says, are you aware of the Argentinian trap scene? Are you working with any Argentinian trap or hip hop artists? Saludos.
Yeah, we're definitely aware of that, and me and Angel have worked with this guy Duki and Kea, and we have worked with Paulo Londra. We have worked with Nati Peluso, which is not necessarily super trap, but yeah, I mean, I'm aware of it, and I listen to some of the tracks that come out. I know a few of the guys, artists, and producers that do it. I think it's a really dope scene, and that is, of course, still developing. I think I haven't maybe been as active on it as I should, for the same reason that we work so much with trap artists from here that it's hard to be on all worlds at the same time. But I'm aware of it, and I think there's.
I think we lost Fed's audio.
Hold on one second. Let me see here. Sorry,
Fed, I think we lost you.
How about now?
Try it again, Fed.
Now.
Yeah, it's a little choppy.
Yeah, I think my computer is really hating everything.
It's funny. We had that situation in masterclass. When we were doing masterclass, we were doing the screen. I forgot what we used then, but I mean, I feel like Logic is optimized for optimum performance, and Ableton is definitely not. Takes
Yeah.
some patience sometimes.
Are you guys
Yeah.
both on laptops?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, the video cards in these aren't too happy sometimes when we screen share and all that. We deal with that on Puremix shoots as well.
Yeah, it's slow.
So while you're working on that, Fed, here's a question for Angel from an old friend of ours. So this is from Joseph Michael, and he says, Angel, what project has been the most innovative, and would you put out on your own collab project, like maybe Timberlow's Shock Value Records?
So what project has been the most innovative?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely the Kanye one. I think both Fed and I were put. He's such a genius in the way he works. He likes to push limits. He likes to take you to like places. I'll throw an example. I remember one day it was just me and Feta there with him in Calabasas, and he's like, "All right, this album is gonna be all horn and vocals, just horns and vocals, you know." So that 400,000 people could sing it all at the same time. And in that moment, you don't understand what he's doing. But the process of that is he takes you to the side of like, go all the way over there to the corner and see what you could get. And you get put in this mental space like, okay, all horns and vocals. So Fed was coming up with some crazy horn arrangements. And we have these incredible guys that do the horns, Jesse and Mike, you know, and we would go and just do that and make a version of that. But then we were able to bring some of that into some of those limitations set by him into what we were already doing in the body of work. And he kind of, it's like you go to the corner and you see what you can get, and then you come back home, and then only some of that stuff stays in. So I think innovatively, I feel like that was a pretty innovative project. And it was because of the process of where he had us going. He had us trying things that were like, it's now going to be a choir album. It's now going to be this.
Right.
And it felt fresh. It felt like its own thing. I feel like that, you know, there was something cool. Like you heard some of what you heard from Kanye, but there was also like Close on Sunday, no drums.
Right.
It's just the guitar that we did, the sample, and then the Moog bass, and it was, you know, I feel like that was pretty innovative.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So this one's from Alex, and he says, when you pitch shift your recording, it instantly sounded hip hop, like a sample. Do you have any other tricks to get a vibe from a recording or a sample?
You want to answer that, Fred?
I guess you're probably referring to like tricks to make it sound more like a sample.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I could, if it's still doing that, I could show I could go through some of the things right here. So let's just say we have this. Oh, there it is.
Now it's sounding like a computer, not loving it more than a sample. But I mean, and also like another thing you can do is like simple is just speeding it up, you know, too.
Yeah.
Which we could try to do on this one.
There's also all these cassette emulators that could drive you to do some crazy things, some crazy like flutter effect, without pitching it. Like Fed said, just, you know, speeding it up or slowing it down. There's really, it's endless. We really don't do it the way, like when we sound pitch it in real time, it's just to kind of hear like what's there and hear the space of the sample itself, what it's going to end up being.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll actually group the stuff, like all the elements, group them, and then throw all the effects on that. And then we might have a different effect on the master. It really just depends, man. It's all about trying. I don't think there's any rules to it.
Right.
You know, there really isn't. You might do something that completely goes against the rules of audio, of, you know, whatever it may be. It goes back to like whatever sounds and feels good.
Yeah.
You know?
I think another important part of this that people sometimes tend to forget is that So we get so many samples, and everybody's using the RC20 and using, you know, these tape plugins, with to the point that it's just getting, to me, it's just so overused. I was talking with Timbaland about that a few days ago, that everybody sends you the sample with the same effect, and it's super detuned and everything. And what you don't hear as much is maybe just musically trying to do something interesting. That's why I think going off other samples and great recordings can help the musical side, because it's really easy to get this thing to sound like a sample. Like, you know, we're gonna pitch it up, maybe speed it up, maybe do some filtering, an EQ, and then it sounds like, oh wow, that's the record. But I think what maybe a lot of people is not putting the right energy into is just creating the musical part to be super dope. Of course, we're doing this really fast. This might not be what we're doing the best example of that, but I think the technical aspect of turning it into something that sounds like a sample is easy. The hard part is to be musical and innovative and put interesting parts. And that's what I hear all the time. It's like, oh, it sounds so cool, but musically it's kind of like not the best, you know? So I feel if you do a little bit more research into instruments for somebody that's trying to do this, you know, instruments from the era, and maybe trying to buy vintage stuff, or maybe go to a studio that has vintage gear and try to do it, but really try to focus on the composition and how people arrange songs in those days, and how, you know, they put it together. I think that's going to make it sound more interesting than just, okay, I put some cool effects into it and it sounds like a sample, you know?
Right. Hey, Fed, I'm going to stop you for a second. We've gone full robot on you, I think. I'm wondering if it might be good if you want to unmute your phone and we'll hear you through there. And then I don't know if you want to try like restarting your system, perhaps.
Let's see.
Let's see if that's better. Say hello to me, Fed.
Hello.
Oh, interesting. Both your phone and your laptop have a transformer effect on them. Not like good transformers, more like Michael Bay transformers.
So what I'm probably going to do is
to try doing a system
maybe
reboot?
Angel can try to open it.
Let's see, I think we've totally lost you at this point. Angel, does he sound like a robot for you as well?
Can you hear me?
Oh, actually, both of you guys do. It could be on my end. So let's keep going. Fed, you can go back to your laptop mic. Let's see. And cool. It looks like it's actually on my end. So keep talking. Keep doing your thing here. Let me figure something out.
Okay. Here trying to make this work, which is a little harder right now.
Is his signal coming in choppy to you from audio movers? Okay. I see. Perfect.
So I'm still trying to make, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I'm trying to make this session thing happen. It's really not loving anything right now, but it happens. I don't know if there's anything we can talk about. Oh, okay. You guys hear that? So, should I do a screen share real fast? Or try it?
We can try it. Let's see what
try.
happens. Yeah.
How's that? Ooh. Definitely screen share is not low. Well, it might be better to not do the screen share and just play it and maybe just talk about it, because I think
Yeah,
it's
if
not
you want
as
to, before you hit play, if you want to maybe show people, like if you pulled up something there, were there plugins involved or anything? Like you could run
Yeah, I
through
mean,
it
this
and then
is
stop the
super
share.
simple right now. I mean, I just like pitched it up. Sometimes sounds better pitching it down, and sometimes it's up. I think for this one, it sounds like good to go up. Then I filter the sample to taking low end out and some high end. And usually too is like if we're gonna make a beat with this, we want to have space for kick drum and 808s and stuff. So we're trying to maybe like take this out. Sometimes we'll leave more. It depends on what we're trying to do. Basically, grouped everything. We got some vocal chop, all the guitars that Angel did, everything we have done on the track list here. Going through a bus or a group, and that's where we will start adding effects. I mean, sometimes we add even more effects to it. I can try to add maybe something else in a second once I close this. It's not a sound, so as simple as that. I'm gonna stop sharing now and see if this works a little bit better. Maybe not. Well, I apologize for the inconvenience, but it's not building us in love it. And also another thing we do a bunch of times, we work with singers that maybe they sing on this stuff, maybe freestyle. And it's really cool too, because when you grab somebody and they sing, especially I think what sounds great is if you have a male singer and you pitch it up, or if you have a female singer and you pitch it down. So it kind of completely changes the format of the vocal. You get a super cool effect that way. So right now, because we're doing this, trying to do this quickly, we are using just a vocal chop, vocal sample from a library. But in general, we'll try to work with a singer, to try to do that, and it gives the sample. It makes it even way more like a record. We have so many of these too that we have done that we have gone to sessions like I mean with Kanye, with a bunch of different artists really, and it's cool because no one really ever, we don't tell people we made the sample a lot of times. We're just like, oh, we have this job and we play it and they love it and they jump on it and start doing things. And, at the end, if they don't know it's a sample or that we did, it's almost like, great,
Yeah.
you'll find out later.
Right. Right.
So here's like with a little bit more of a tempo. And then another thing to mention too is even when I played it and it's a little bit off, timing wise, I think that's good because you have to understand a lot of these samples, like they're not really tight in general. When you hear them, they were played live. So that's another secret of the sauce. I think try to leave things as loose as you can without sounding maybe too wrong, but I think wrong is good. Stuff that's out of time and not hitting with each other. If it's everything is quantized and perfect, I think that it doesn't sound like a sample. So Angel, do you think we should maybe like bounce this to a 2-track and try to see if we can put some drums in it? I don't know if you can hear me.
Angel, you're muted right now.
I keep hitting the mute thing. Definitely.
Oh, this is cool. There's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Dean Fairweather is asking, can you tell me how you use the Waves shifter? Did you pitch each track up a little? Says it sounds great.
What we do is we run the whole sample through a bus. And usually we put effects on that. Let's say we put like maybe a tape emulation or run it through a cassette tape that we have. Um, and and then we put maybe compression, EQ, whatever you want to put on that master to make it sound as you want. And then you put the pitch. So the cool thing about the pitch, I think if you put it afterwards, because you actually emulating what you will do on a sampler. So if this was a real sample, it's already going to be running through, tape and vinyl. And sometimes you can add a vinyl noise to it, and then pitch it with the vinyl noise, which I forgot to do this one. We can add it later. And I think it makes it better.
I think it's bouncing from Fede. Because he has the audio. Yeah, I think it's bouncing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, when it bounces, it does that.
That's right. Like, I was actually, so I've been doing mix sessions like this, like using audio movers and Zoom like this. And we found out the other day that even though like if you're doing a bounce and you have audio movers on that master track, even though you don't hear it coming out of your speakers, whoever's on the other end of the line does. It's kind of an interesting thing there, like where it's muting the
right. The other person does. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's useful tip for anybody who's working with remote on audio movers.
Good to know. Well, I just bouncing now, but yeah, I mean, I think it's better to, of course, pitch everything together. I like the sound shifter pitch a lot. It's maybe some people don't, and maybe the quality is not the best, but I think it's cool. And then sometimes we like to pitch it all like an old school sample where we just, when you pitch it, it's going faster and it's that kind of without doing time stretching, But in this case, I'm gonna see if now with the screen sharing works good now. And Angel, I saved this also as like with a different name now. It says beat. But I don't have my drum. Let's see. Now that I took all the other plugins out and I just have the. Yeah, but so if you were, let's say, to use like. I'm just speaking whatever vinyl sound. So at this point, we usually maybe decide how we want to like go into this beat, and it could be a more trap thing, or it could be, I mean, it just really depends. This might turn into a song instead of a beat, you never know. Right. So I don't know how we're looking on time. If we have time to like maybe try to do something with this. Or...
How are you guys feeling?
We're good.
You guys want to keep going for a little bit? Try and do a beat thing?
Yeah, I think we could put a beat on it.
You know, it might be fun too is if maybe in a little bit here, not now, but if we go back and listen to that initial inspiration track to see like how even when you start in one place it all morphs.
I just can't seem to understand what I have to say to make you realize that each and every day I live for you guys.
Right.
So, I mean, also, if we were to do this for real, we'll probably add some horns and strings. I couldn't really open my contact on this because my computer was freaking out, but we might add also some vocals. Sometimes it's even copy more than instrumentation and the music too. If you hear, sometimes we hear something and it might be, I don't know, it's just a drum with a bassoon and guitar. And that's so interesting. Let's just do actually something with that same instrumentation, and we might do a complete different vibe, but starting from that. And like I said before, I think it's really important to try to use other people's music. And I always make this analogy is it's like if you're a lawyer, you're not going to reinvent the law every time you have to, defend somebody. Same if you're a doctor. I think there's people that's been doing this for so many years, and it's a humbling thing to, learn from other people and just think these people's masters that created this. Right? I don't know about this sample, but in general, these people have been doing, this for more time than we've been alive. So we will be dumb not to take advantage of all this knowledge that's already out there, and then you add your thing to it, and sometimes the funny thing is people sometimes steal without knowing they're stealing from somebody else. And I think that's the worst place you can be at, because it's almost like it might make you think, oh, I did this, but no, it's just something that was in your head and it sounds exactly like this other thing. But when you are actually going from an existing thing, you know specifically, oh, I'm stealing from this, but I'm making my own version. And the guys that created this track, they were stealing from somebody else. They were inspired. When I say stealing, I mean inspiration. But there's always that phrase of, amateurs borrow, professionals steal. I think the best that ever did it are the ones that take more from anybody else. Listen to even John Williams. Go to YouTube and type, Star Wars John Williams, where he took his themes from, and you will hear he even take themes from things of other composers in the same exact key, and of course he's applying it into what he's doing. Then you have, people like Daft Punk and Timbaland, and I think it's very important. And that's might be one of the reasons why we don't get so inspired with samples sometimes when people send us, is because it sounds like it was made by somebody with a limited maybe musical knowledge. But and we also are musicians, so we have knowledge of chords and things. But I
Right.
think the more you know, the more you realize the importance of working with other people. And in this case, we're working with these guys that did this track. We don't know who they are. We
Right.
never met them. They might not be alive, but look at that. We're just using their
I have a book here that I have to show you. Hold on, that's like all about this. And this
In
is,
fact, did
hold
it
on, this
did
is
it
awesome.
upload already? Because I don't see that audio file.
All right, back.
My
So
dog was up.
on that same topic, Fed,
Yeah.
this is an incredible book. It's called Steal Like an Artist. It's from Austin, I think Cleon, but he talks about that same concept. And this is like a journal for it. It's like another work piece to it. But the actual book, it's maybe like an hour-long read, but it's fantastic. It's basically for creatives, like when you get stuck in a rut, trying to get out of it, and how like stealing ideas is
Nice.
something, like you said, has been going on for forever. And it's not really, by the time that you're done with your idea or whatever, that's why I think it's going to be interesting to go back after we do a little more on this thing and listen to the original inspiration, because it's not going to sound really that similar to it. The vibe will be there and the inspiration is there, and it'll, but it's not going to sound like a copy.
Yeah. And I think that Kanye is actually a good example of somebody that does that. I mean, by the way, I'm going to definitely check out the book. And I think Kanye is somebody that does that extremely well, because his songs might start like a very simple loop that somebody found. And then when you hear the final version, it might be, I mean, it happened with this song, Jesus is Lord and the Jesus is King, where, like Angel was saying, we actually replayed the whole sample. And it was a really hard sample to replay. Right? It was extremely hard. And then when we got it, he was like, okay, now let's do it all with horns. Now let's change the chords. And then when we got to the very end product, this nothing but horns doing this track is the last track in the album. And when you hear the original, oh my God, it's like completely different. So
Yeah.
I think all the masters work in that same way. And maybe nobody, for some reason, nobody likes to say that. It feels like it's a bad thing to talk about taking,
Right.
and I think it's just humbling, and it's just part of what we do. I think it applies to every single thing in life, from making furniture to being a doctor to anything. You just build on what's already there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, they were asking what the book is again. So it's this one, guys. It's called Steal Like an Artist from Austin Cleon. Good book. So, but yeah, you're right. It is kind of funny how people don't like to talk about it, but it really is kind of something that we're all doing. I mean, and that applies to all the mixers, from Puremix as well. Like we're all watching Andrew Sheps do certain techniques and then trying to emulate that tone or that sound, and you end up with your own style eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's nice to go and do it your own way too. And sometimes, I mean, of course, you don't have to do things always the same way. Sometimes I like to start not knowing what's going on, but I feel that more often than not, what I'm gonna do coming from me and my inspiration is definitely my brain picking on things that already happened, and it might be a distorted version of that I'm doing, and that's one way of doing it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to also distort it on purpose and really, being very on purpose to do it. But then when you're in the journey of doing it, because most likely you're gonna fail at really replicating it, exactly. Then that's how you find your own sound, and by doing that, suddenly you put in this musical knowledge that you didn't have before, and then you're actually growing as an artist or a producer. The problem, maybe, like I said, is sometimes maybe people might tend to not steal at all and think that they're creating something new, and it's like your brain taking it without you knowing, or
Right.
stealing where there's no you didn't take that to any other level. For example, now, by the way, Angel, I think this should be up. I don't know if you see it or
Yeah,
it's
it's
getting up
still
right now.
uploading. I'm waiting. It keeps coming up empty. It'll be on here.
I would rather see if you can. My computer is really not loving anything right now, so if you can get started on maybe adding something to it now.
Yeah,
But
I'm just waiting for it to
going back,
do it very quick.
okay, but going back to the same thing, just opening up your head into ideas that maybe you wouldn't come up with yourself, and then getting in the journey of making them your own. And now Angel might put some drums that have nothing to do with what this was originally. So we're like escalating it to another level of creativity. Um, I guess some people
Mm-hmm.
might argue that, oh, the original was better, but everybody's gonna have an opinion. You have to do what feels right to you, but you know,
Yeah, and part of the point is you're not really trying to beat the original. You're trying to create something new and
absolutely, yeah.
unique. Yeah, yeah,
Getting out of your
awesome.
comfort zone too, and getting out of your habits. I think something that we both learned from Timbo and Kanye,
Mm.
and a bunch of people, but I would say like Kanye and Tim, they're probably the kings of that, is always being out of your comfort zone. I mean, if you're doing something that you feel comfortable doing and you're like, oh, I know exactly what to do, I mean, you might have success because we know people that do it and it's very successful. But I think if the definition of success for you means to try to elevate your art and grow as an artist, then being out of your comfort zone at all times, it seems to me like the only way to really do it. And that's what we observe working with all the true masters of this, is that they live in the most comfort, out of the comfort zone situation you can imagine, to the point that I think it's annoying for them and their collaborators and everybody.
Mm.
And you're always tired and you're always kind of like, oh my god, like when this is going to end. But that feeling, it kind of always propelling your creativity and your creative energy to a really good place, versus, well, I'm going to do the same thing that I did yesterday and just the same way. Almost every day you should try at least one thing that is a little bit different than what you usually do, even for mixers, for anybody. That's why maybe I'm not big fan nowadays of using templates, although I think if you're mixing 350 records a year, you're probably gonna need a template. But
Right, right.
for producing, I feel it's nice to go out of nothing sometimes and getting fast at creating from scratch. And maybe certain things you can have ready so you get fast to it. But I think that it actually puts that blank page, that scary blank page in front of you, that you're like, oh, what the hell do I do? And it's scary. And then also being patient with yourself, something that I'm learning, I think, now more than ever, is that it's fine to do stuff that's not great. and
Mm-hmm.
and we see it with masters and people that's incredible. When you hear the first demo or something like that, you're like, oh wow, this is trash, and then 6 months later it's a masterpiece. You have to be patient with yourself and with the music, and just let it be. You know, I used to have a very critical view, and I still do, of myself. And oh no, it has to be this way, and getting depressed if it's not great. But sometimes, I do 4 things that aren't great, and then the number 5 is the one, and that's great. And just have that faith that it's eventually it's gonna come. All you gotta do is show up.
Right.
And, I don't know if Angel, you have a audio going, or I'm not. I gotta get back to the link that you sent us.
Oh yeah, Angel's down here working. We're chatting away.
Nah, you're good. It just uploaded right now.
Nice.
So should I do a screenshot? I'll see if I could do.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'll actually bring this to clip. Can you guys see it?
Yep. Yeah, all good.
All right, so I'm just gonna get rid of all these tracks. So I grabbed his the sample that we rendered already. So it was here. I sped it up even more.
Awesome.
So you'll notice that these are probably gonna be hitting red. I don't bring the volumes down until I'm done with it. Like, if you've ever worked with Tim, there's like, it gets so red. The meter gets so red, it almost turns a different color. Like, we're just used to working it. And then when we're doing stems, we'll bring it down. I remember working. It's a funny story. We were working with this engineer named Josh. He was with James Blake, and he came in because David wasn't available. And I remember, people flip out when they see Tim's chain, and he's like, how are you doing it? It's clipping. But, some of the sound with Tim is the fact that he hits red, and then he renders it red, and then they bring it down. Right. It's not always the best result. I know engineers probably go crazy. I know Jason's always like, yo, that kick is – Jason Joshua will hit him up and be like, yo, like, no, the kick is messed up. And Tim's like, yo, or he'll send a loop. He'll send a whole drum loop, and he's like, no, it sounds that way. It sounds the way it does because it's all in one. Right. You know what I mean? But it's always interesting to see people, especially engineers, react to like the levels of shit. It's hilarious.
Yeah. You taught me a lesson on that.
Oh, I mean, we could do hip hop drums. I'm trying to find, I whenever we have a sample like this, you just go through different tempos.
So just to recap too, you guys have actually turned this into a stereo file at this point.
Yeah, correct.
That's why I like the clip view so much.
I almost hear this one with like not using 8 note or 16 note hi-hats, just doing something maybe like using the hi-hats maybe like sparse or something.
The Moog might be cool for this part. Happened. That is weird. That was weird. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
I like duplicated it. So I see Fed did his thing right here.
Okay, that's a little.
So I don't know if you guys could see that this thing down here. This is actually what Fed was talking about that he created. He put a bunch of like EQs. I don't know what all is in this chain, Fed, but I know I've seen it recently, and it just makes
high
it easier.
pass,
Like
low pass, gain, phase, pan. Just the basic things, but you can do it from from the push, and it's fine.
So are those a bunch of plug-in chains that are being controlled by those knobs, or?
Actually, it's just two plugins. I think it's just EQ and the utility plugin. I'm trying to keep it super light on the CPU, so it's like the Ableton EQ. Very simple stuff.
So, let's start. So I'm gonna put this up already, Fed. That way you can start maybe that wave bass would be dope. The Moog,
See
or
if we can make it work.
Nice. So next thing, this goes to the Dropbox, syncs up to Fede's computer, and then he opens and keeps working.
yeah.
Very cool. How
And
much of this have you
did
guys had to do since like the whole lockdown started and everything, and you guys are working remotes, obviously, like not hitting
Oh yeah,
studios too often.
we've been doing it a lot. It's not in real time like this. It's mostly like I'll get it to a part, and I'll save it as version A, and then Fed will go into version A and create Fed or create version FA, and he'll take my version, do something with it. And we always say versions in case we want to go back to something from a prior version.
Right.
But it's usually like every morning or something, like, yo bro, I uploaded this beat, it has this and that. Fed will be like, yo, I hear this, like he said right now, like, let's not go with the 16 hats. He might be like, yo, why don't we try this? Or he'll do it and he'll be like, look, I switched the beat, and we just show each other, and it's been pretty cool. I think it's an interesting time right now for everybody in the industry. These are like new territories, and I think everybody's done a great job at finding a way to work around and find a way to work through this, and I think it's cool because it thank God for this technology that we have, that we're able to just sense stuff right away and jump on stuff, and it's been pretty seamless for us. It's been pretty cool. We've been using it a lot.
That's
almost like a daily thing, working new stuff. And I think the problem out of all this is we've been creating so much, it's like we forget, like, oh, we made that last week, and we have to go back and kind of monitor all the stuff we're doing, because it's just a lot. And it's super productive, honestly. It's super productive.
What do you guys think that this is going to change anything for you after lockdowns let up and everything, and you guys are back in studios? Do you think you're going to be doing more work like this than you did before, just because you've developed a workflow, or?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know people are already doing sessions. We were talking about this earlier. People are already moving on to do sessions. I'm a bit on edge about that still. Still, we got to think about the studio environment is intended to be enclosed.
It's an airtight room.
It's airtight room, and it's like, it's kind of like not the vibe for a minute. So, I think I'm more comfortable, with this approach for right now. And Fed brought up this cool idea the other day of like maybe getting together in a park 6 feet apart with some guitars and doing some recordings on the iPhone, and just finding new ways to do it with some of those guidelines. but this workflow, I mean, it's fine. We were using it similarly before. Now it's just been more constant, you know, because we're not together every day. Before the quarantine, we weren't together every day. We'd be maybe a couple times of the week we'd get together before a session, or we go do a session. But now it's just the new norm. It's the workflow of right now, you know?
Right. Yep.
I don't know. It's cool though. I like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's
especially
crazy
for Fed.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Say what?
No, I was gonna say it's pretty cool to be working from home. You know, you get the family time. Fed's got his little boy. You got your little boy. So I think this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to. So Angel, you just freeze the drums.
Yeah, but the other should have done everything else, right?
So what? It's just the sample on drums that you giving me, right?
Yeah, but it's in clip view now.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to like put it up.
And then should we switch over to Fed screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just.
Cool.
Let me just give me a second just to make
Fingers
sure
crossed.
it's not. Yeah. Yeah, but that's right.
There's some comments in the chat room. People are digging the kick sound with the clipping. It's the distortion that it's kind of adding the hair on it.
Yeah, and you know, we'll go back and emulate that. Like we might add like a soft clip to the bus or something to make it pump like that when it gets to making stems or making it sound right. Right now it's obviously you hear it and it's like clipping the crap out of the channel, you know? But it does give it a sound, and we learned that with Tim. It's a lot of his stuff, even from the ASR, that natural distortion. He always clips stuff. You know, I always wonder, you know, what's the secret? And it's just like he pushes the limits into each of those samples. You know, a super distorted rim shot might sound like something else if you distort the crap out of it. Same with the kick. I find that a lot with the kick. I like the crispy kick like that.
Right.
You know, but it's a balance. It's a matter of balance, because then you have to consider the 808, whatever 808 sample. You don't want to be too aggressive on the, you know, on the low end, and you want to leave room for that. So it's, again, just to start, I always start like this, and then I'll go and level everything.
Right. Yeah, it's cool though. It is a sound for sure.
Yeah. Did it pop up, Fed?
So at this point, yeah, I think I'm probably gonna have to play it without sharing the screen, because like it doesn't even work when I share the screen.
Is he a transformer for you, Angel?
Yeah, he was a little Transformers. But I think he was saying that without the screen share, solely because of I think it's causing issues on the computer.
Sure.
Yeah, I think at this point we're probably not gonna work with that.
Fed, it might be crazy, but I don't know if you can mount your phone so we're seeing the screen from that.
I can try. Let's see.
Kind of crazy.
Can you guys hear it?
Nah, you might. Did you turn off your transmission?
Yeah. There's sound now?
Yeah, we got it. Don't feel like you have to hold the phone the whole time. It might be kind of hard to work that way.
Okay.
All right, now play the keyboard.
Right? So going back to not holding the phone because I can't hold it.
Cool. Yeah, no worries.
Cool. So yeah, now I guess usually we'll be arranging this somehow. So I was trying to add some bass with the synths, but for some reason Ableton now it's not loving when I record audio, which is weird. It should be less processing than using a plugin. But as I was saying, adding a little bit of bass. So I'm gonna try to use a software bass and see if that doesn't crash everything. I was gonna also say, going back to the distorted drum thing, I think sometimes, I know this goes against what people think, but it's not bad on certain styles of music to bounce things in red. I guess there's this knowledge of like, oh, everything should be always be on 0, but so many times we just push the master to +6, and it sounds good. Of course, when you are printing in, 32-bit audio with high sample rate, it might sound great, and then when you downgrade it into 44, 16, and go into MP3, it sounds even worse. But not always. I think you can experiment sometimes bouncing things. It's just really a matter of what sound you want. I mean, the sound of a clipping program like Ableton might be good for certain styles of music. So I will encourage people to not follow the rules and clip the stuff too sometimes. And you can use clippers, like Angel was saying, we do that a lot. But there's a bunch of times that I'm putting a limiter and it looks right, but it sounded better when I distorted it,
Right.
Right. So yeah, guys, I'm sorry at this point, like my computer is not even responding to anything.
Oh, no worries.
Like it just gets stuck when I.
They like to do that sometimes.
I guess.
You guys want to do a couple
if he
questions?
comes back, yeah, let's do a couple questions. If he comes back,
Cool. Let's see. So whose audio movers is that?
That's probably me, because he's still like catching up to me first and stuff.
Yeah, what all the things I want you to do. Nice. Okay, so Bruno is asking to confirm once again the session sharing through audio movers and Dropbox. So he's saying, like, how do you guys manage version control, i.e. file naming? So I don't know if you can share your screen, Angel, if you want to show like maybe the file nomenclature that you guys use to keep an idea of like what version are we on, who did the edit.
See, I mean, this is a little different because we're using in real time. We're going back and forth, so we use this current project folder.
Yeah.
So it started with like my version is here. This was Fed's first version, and in it he had the sample and he had the group, which had the keys, the drum, and then I brought that in. I don't know. I think that question, it's very particular for this situation that we're doing it this way. Other than that, let's say, here's a typical thing for us. Let's just say one of our collaborators sent us a sample. And let's just say the Mosley brothers, they sent us a sample, and the sample's called Calabasas. It'll be called Calabasas. And then if Fed starts the beat and he has the idea where he develops the sample into something else, it'll be Calabasas F, and then I'll take it from there, and then I'll open the Calabasas F session, or like for this is more of what we use right here. So I'll take this right here, open that up, and then I'll save my version with A, and that's how we start stacking them. But it's really, I think that's really the only naming convention. We organize it per, let's say we're working towards sending stuff for artist A, we'll have a folder for artist A, and then it's whatever the name of the sample or whatever we feel like naming it. But this is how we keep track of who's touched it, and whether Fed has done it or whether I have, and it just keeps it easy that way.
That's cool.
And it's good too. Yeah, it's good. We do that because, again, sometimes if I do something Fed is like, I don't know about that, I think the other version's better, we could always go to the version before it and draw back on that, or grab a part from it and bring it into the new one, if it got scratched in the process. But that's really it. It's pretty seamless.
Yeah, that's great. And then with Dropbox too, you're already sharing the files and everything. So once you're working on something, it's in his folder because you guys have sharing like sync turned on, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So anytime I have something for him to do, I'll just be like, yo, I uploaded this. If you're feeling it, do your thing to it. And then he'll hit me up same day or a day later, like, yo, I touched that, check it out. Or he'll send me a bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, if something, sometimes we send stuff to each other that is like, it might be near finish line. It's just a matter of like, you look at it, you're like, yeah, I really don't want to touch that. I think, let me hit up a writer and let me get a top liner, and we'll hit up somebody and we'll put the top line, and then we'll arrange the beat according to that top line, and then boom, there it is.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it keeps stuff. I think the system works. It makes me realize after the quarantine, because we were doing this before the quarantine. Now it makes me realize how awesome this system is, because this is like what we're relying on now. We're
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
forced to do this right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's crazy. Like, the people who made audio movers, I wonder if they had, you know, like obviously it was a great idea and it was going to be this useful piece of software, but I doubt that they had any inclination that, there was going to be this time where everybody was on it and using it and needing that tech to be
Mm-hmm.
able to keep working and everything. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. It's just they
Oh
didn't know that they
yeah.
were creating a tool that everybody was going to need.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's great because I've been doing like A&Ring sessions where we'll go through beats and beat
Mm-hmm.
packs, and instead of everybody having the folder, you just put it on there and you work on it from that way, where kind of like file control, so not everybody has to have the thing, and you go on there and we do the same thing. I don't think I've used audio movers with some writers. I don't think me and Fed have actually used it working this way. It's
Mm-hmm.
mostly, again, like, hey, I uploaded the session, boom. But I know there's a way to record uh someone in real time, right? Which is
There's
absolutely
a receive plugin.
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. That I think you were
Yeah.
doing that before. If
I
when you were
did.
in Vegas, right?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So the studio I work at here, I had started working before moving to Las Vegas. Moved there. This is back in 2009, 2010. Uh, Moved to Vegas. They wanted me to keep doing sessions. So for a while I was flying back and forth. And then there was a thing called Source Connect at the time, which same idea as Audio Movers. It was actually replacing a tech that was called ISDN, which like was used for voiceovers and commercials mostly. But they were extremely expensive lines, and it cost like hundreds of dollars just to do a connect and all that. So this thing called Source Connect was out, and using that and Skype, basically there was a booth at the studio that I put a laptop in. The laptop was pointed at the singer, so they could like look over and see me on their screen, and I could see them. And then I would remote in with Skype and a program called Log Me In that I did the remote control for. So I was controlling the computer remotely, listening to the audio that was happening on site via Source Connect back in Vegas. So I was able to like record them down to the session, and then I would use Dropbox and send it back to myself in Vegas
That's
after the
awesome.
session. So
That's
only really
wild.
worked for like vocal sessions, but yeah, it was
Yeah, but
crazy.
the idea of just like, that's really what we have to rely on now.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
think it's cool that we have access to it. So,
yeah.
um, yeah,
There's
this is a great
something
way to
really neat.
collaborate.
There was a friend of mine that was working on a big record, like big budget and everything, and they had started it right before everything happened with COVID. And when that happened, they were like, "Man, I just like the record's on pause. It kind of sucks because we were getting close. We just needed a couple more vocal sessions, and we were ready to mix." And I heard about this other guy who was actually like he would put together like a laptop Apollo system and with a mic, and he would ship it off to his clients, and he had it like preloaded with everything, and he would basically be like, when you get the package, just plug in the Apollo into the laptop, open it up, and Zoom me, and then after that, like just get behind the mic, and he would take care of everything. But it was
That's
because like
wild.
he's like, we're not going to stop from working on this massive record because we can't be together or whatever. I'm just going to send you a laptop and an Apollo, and we're going to keep going or whatever. So
That's
yeah,
incredible.
kind of nuts.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, they were able to finish it. That helped him out because he was going to be out of work for a couple of weeks and stuff. So yeah.
There it is.
Um, we have a pretty cool question. So Fed, what are you up to? Are you having fun with your
I was just
computer?
trying to like see if I can maybe work a little bit more and maybe perhaps send it to Angel,
That's perfect.
because maybe he can play from his system better than I can from here.
Yeah, that's
Perfect.
great. And then while you're doing that, Angel, can I ask you another question?
Yeah,
while
for
he's
sure.
working? Sweet. So Juan asks, when you guys send out tracks, do you guys mix them yourselves? So it might be interesting to go over like how you guys interface with the mix engineer. I know that you have a really cool system for setting up stems and how you export multi-tracks and Pro
Is
Tools
that
sessions that way.
question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
No,
that's
you could
right.
go ahead, Fed.
No, I was asking, is that question, I guess if he's asking for tracks when they're done and we already finished the whole production, that's usually when we get it mixed. But when we're sending ideas or beats, we actually, sort of do our own mix, which, I mean, it's kind of an interesting topic because I don't think that you necessarily have to mix when you have the right ingredients in it. And there's so many producers
Right.
that, I mean, and we have done it too, where the 2 track of the beat goes to the mix, and that's the mix, because sometimes it's hard for maybe an engineer to say like, oh, I'm gonna beat that, and it's hard to beat it. I mean, if you have like already certain processing that you do, and we try to make it sound as good as we can before we send it, and try to make it sound like a record from the get-go. And usually, and sometimes the mix might involve just doing the vocals, but sometimes we mix the vocals as well. I think nowadays with the availability of, you know, things like Pure Mix, I mean, really you're getting that, you can get that knowledge, and with practice you can do it. And I think to me that nowadays what a mixer brings to the table is just an extra ear that is gonna maybe do things that you might have not realized. Maybe it's not so much of the overall package, but details. There might be a little clip on a thing, or maybe a bad edit, um, and maybe there's a frequency that we don't hear no more because we hear it so many times. The hi hat might be clashing with the S. Things like that. I think is useful, but I'll say not 9 out of 10 times the final mix is almost identical. I mean, I always experiment with my wife, and it's like, okay, can you hear the mix? Like, how is it better? And then it's funny because a lot of times the trains you go to dancing, our wife may be like, oh, I like it. I like this one better. And it's the pro. And that makes you think like, oh, they really improve, like, so. But when we send it to a mixer, we usually try to separate things in a way that's logical for the mixer and being conscious of that person having a good time doing it, because you don't want to open something with 700 tracks and 12 kicks, and something like that. You kind of want to keep it unified. And I mean, even sometimes we might have a bunch of different hi-hat tracks just to make the hi-hat loop, or sometimes all the hi-hats percussion is one stem. And I'm actually a fan of trying to give the smallest amount of tracks. And if the mixer wants more, then we give some more, But like I said, we try to make the stuff sound good. If we're layering different elements, like let's say even with something like pads or keys, if you're layering a bunch of stuff to create one sound, I just send that one sound. You don't have to separate it all. In Ableton, there's a cool way that you can do it now, because when you export all your tracks, by the way, Angel, I just save this as new Pure Mix F2 beat, so you might be able to open it. Actually, I'm going to the example channel. But I was saying, with Ableton, you can group tracks. So let's say you select a bunch of tracks and you put group, and then that's your group. When you go into bounce or export, you can actually tell Ableton, okay, export all the separate tracks, and it will actually, it's a new feature that it exports the buses and the groups as well. So a lot of times what I'll do is, let's say I group, I don't know, a stack of hi-hats in one group, and when I press the bounce, it's gonna export that whole package of that whole group as one thing, and it makes it easy. I mean, in Logic, I used to do it when you can like bounce the track too, and do this real-time bounce, and you select everything. In Ableton, it's a little bit different, but I think if you are happy with the sound and the label is happy and everybody's happy, you should try to like be careful with giving too much separation. I mean, with Timbaland, honestly, a lot of times, 9 out of 10 times, he'll send you a whole package with the drums. So the drums
I've
is
texted,
like a 2-track.
I've texted Jason Joshua plenty of times, like, forewarning either Jason or the assistant, like, yo, just by the way, Tim's parts aren't separated. Like it's a package.
Right.
You know, they're like, oh, one of those. Okay, cool. You know,
Right.
but you know, he's a genius, so he's able to, you know, work around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, to add to what Fed was saying, this is actually a perfect example of something we probably wouldn't send stems to. We had a musical piece we did for Kanye. It was something that didn't make it, but when they asked us for stems, we were trying to explain, you know, the engineer, like, we can't separate it. If we separate it from the group, it's not going to sound the same.
Right.
So I think Fed, we ended up screenshotting like all the chain, and even then it just wasn't the same. You know, it was like, you got to take it for what it is. So we put intent into showing love and making sure, like what Fed said, I think having good ingredients to begin with is the most important thing, and making sure we have that, it'll see its way out that way.
Right.
And you see it countless of times where songs have made it out with the bounce of the producer, you know, especially in hip hop nowadays. You see that a lot, or like, you know, who mixed it? Oh, well, that's kind of your 2-track. Oh, really?
Right.
Okay. You know, and all it is just making sure everything is sitting, and then maybe some light thing on the master, you know, ozone and a couple other little things just to glue everything together. But yeah, that's I don't think it's so much that we put the intent like, oh, we got to mix this beat. It just naturally happens as you're creating. You want to make sure there's not a sound that is going to clash where the vocal is going to come in, you know, where the artist is not going to have the room. So you naturally just kind of cook it that way, you know, as you're going. It's not like, oh, let's mix the beat. You know, yeah, sometimes we'll listen to it being like, that sounds kind of rough. Let's show some love to it very quick. And we'll dive in. And more than mix, it ends up being an arrangement thing, like, oh, maybe we got to get rid of that sound and, you know, just create space. But
less is more, man. That's another important thing to get, is like, I think everything sounds better sometimes, or we will get very intricate with chains if we are sound designing something. Like Angel was talking about, Ableton, you can save your chains. Like a lot of those people do that, but saving your chains, that's a whole lot of effects. But when it comes to the actual track, I think you have to try to keep it as minimal as possible. I always feel like if you have to EQ like a drum, for example, that means it's probably not the right drum. Like I feel like you shouldn't have to EQ, compress. I mean, I might put a delay on a snare because I want a tail or maybe some kind of reverb, but I feel with using the right sounds, and this goes for recording as well. Like if you are tracking guitars, you know, you really shouldn't be EQing if you are tracking it correctly with the right sound for the song. And one of my mentors was this engineer, Jimmy Douglas. I always talk about him with friends, but I always saw him like mixing it, and dude like had no plugins at all. Like, I remember him, they sent me this track and I'm mixing it, and he'll be AVing the producer mix with his mix, and his mix was like, you know, breathtaking. It was so good. I mean, if you listen to a lot of the Justin Timberlake records with Tim, listen to even the sound of the vocals and the drums, and compared with a lot of the things coming out today, like the level of openness, and it's immersive, it's insane. And his principle, I would look at his session, and I'm not lying, in 100 tracks, he'll have like 3 plugins on the whole session. And he's like, I come from the days of moving faders, and that's how I do it, you know? And leveling right is, you know, the right sound selection with the right levels will give you everything. I mean, every time I get even beats from Angel, when we go through the process of sending each other stuff, I mean, his beats sound great right off the bat, and there's nothing on anything. Like, it's just super bare bones, the beat that he just did with the right sounds. I'm sure he'll spend, you know, some time making sure that every sound is right, more than, oh, I'm going to EQ the snare, because, you know, it's like, if you have to EQ, just get another one. That's the principle, or layer it with something else. I feel that applies to everything. And sometimes when I get beats from people that I hear sound weird, and I ask them, what do you have on that? And they might have a lot of plugins, and I'm compressing the kick. I'm like, no, you know, don't do anything. Just leave it as is. It will sound way better that way. It's actually better to work more on the final mastering, or the finalization of the track with all together, But even with that, I mean, I think even Greg Wells was talking about that on one of the podcasts you guys did, saying, you know, how he's not trying to use a lot of effects on his two track, you know, and I'm with that as well. I feel like sometimes the more open you can leave it, it just sounds better. I don't know. Jimmy Douglas had this thing that he says, like, in his opinion, every time you add something and the computer gets taxed, the sound gets degraded. I don't know technically if that's correct or not, but it sounds to my ears like it is. When you have a session with a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
the sound, it starts sounding smaller, you know?
Right.
Makes any
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, and there's all kinds of phase things that happen when you're doing EQ moves and all that stuff, and it just thins things out. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, important note. Somebody just ordered the mouse pad armrest thingy that Fede is using off of eBay. You better get.
Well, I have it too. I have it too. Fede tends to find all the cool gadgets that you just get converted to.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he always has this one thing. You're like, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, this is game changer.
You got like a Star Trek captain vibe going on there with that.
Right? I can control everything. Awesome. Well, I mean, honestly, that's the vibe that I try to have on the studio. I mean, you guys, maybe I can show with my phone, but even
awesome.
Here,
yeah.
You know, for example, I use this a lot for like bass and stuff, and it's great because I can actually tweak this and tweak my bass sound while I'm programming drums in here, because that's the problem with DAWs is that you don't really have, you can't use two channels at the same time. You know, if you want to tweak the bass, you got to go and click on your bass channel and do it.
Yeah.
You know, but what I like to do with the synths and this stuff, I mean, I have like some more synths in here, is like,
amazing.
I can just tweak everything and I don't have to be changing to another channel. So I might be tweaking my kick drum with one hand, and then with my other hand, I'm actually like checking the frequency of my filter on my bass here.
Right.
And it's that immediacy that allows you to work fast. Right. And that's going back to what I was saying. Like, maybe I don't have I don't like using a template, but I do like the hardware thing, because you can tweak a lot of stuff, you know. And then we always run stuff, you know, have this little pedal thing here.
Nice.
And then there's another one down here. So if I'm running stuff through this guy, like I said, I might be just controlling like this delay. I don't have to go to the channel that has the delay and then open it and wait. It's just more intuitive way of working, you know. You just move shit around. So
it's like being on a console where you can be like making adjustments within seconds versus opening up a window.
Exactly.
Opening up a window.
I highly recommend for people, I mean, especially now that hardware is getting cheap with you know, synths and stuff, just even use one, you know. Like, I honestly have a bunch of stuff that I don't use at the same time. I'm a player, so I like to play them just for fun. I don't always use everything. And sometimes it's nice to change it up. Sometimes I take my laptop to the balcony and then I just make stuff where I don't even have a keyboard. It's just, you know, typing notes. And I like that workflow because it changes your thinking. So I like changing vibes, but I really enjoy the freedom of hardware where I can just multitask. And like you said, it's the console, same thing as a console, and it makes it for an interesting workflow, you know?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it looks like such an ergonomic setup that you have there. Like you took a lot of care into that. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of like developed by itself, just by working, and then me feeling like, man, I'm so tired of doing this thing, and I'm like, how can I make that process into something that I don't have to think about, you know? And I just make decisions based on that. That's why I'm careful with the gear that I buy. I try to buy stuff that I know I'm gonna need or test it, and with plugins too, just take some time to use the demo. Is this something that is gonna really add to what I'm doing? And like Angel was saying about our friend Jasper sample guy, that I mean, what you can do with the built-in tools in your DAW, I mean, honestly, that's all you need. We buy shit and tend to use other things, but I think it's a very wrong idea. I think some of the best stuff that I've done, it was done on headphones with no keyboard, versus sometimes I connect all my synths and guitars and all my preamps and nothing comes out, you know, like There's
Right.
no rule to this. But what is fun, and I think it's just let's keep it fun for ourselves, because like this can be a tedious job sometimes, especially when you have the pressure of finishing projects and things
Right.
like that. But I want to have fun, and to me, having like certain toys, you want to go and have that feeling. Like creativity is very related to game, you know, and like you see it, I'm sure, with your kid when they're playing. There's there's no good or bad way of playing. You know,
Right.
a kid is
Right.
grabbing something and playing, and it's like there's no good or bad. I'm just playing and having fun.
Yeah.
When you do that on your everyday, activities in the studio, I think that's when you get the best stuff. You're just like
Yeah.
playing. You don't care about anything. You're just going at it. The
That's a
hard part is
great
to apply that.
analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, go
My
ahead.
my son's favorite toy is my glasses. You know, it's like we buy him like nice toys or whatever that we think he's gonna love, and then like he sees me and he just like goes to grab the glasses, and then he just sits there for like an hour just playing with them or whatever. So it's kind
Yeah,
of funny.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool
Same
because like
idea.
it's that same energy. There's a really cool video by one of the guys that used to be a writer on the Monty Python where he talks about creativity. It's actually on YouTube. My
Hmm.
friend showed it to me, and he talks about that, like the open space and the closed space. And he's saying like there's a thing called the open space where you're just creating with no goal of any kind, and
Hmm.
usually that state can take 15, 20 minutes for me. He's saying to like get in the zone where I'm forgetting about everything. I'm just playing. I'm not judging myself in any way. It's just doing things like I'm playing like a little kid. And then you got to take that into what he calls the closed space, which is finishing it, which for us is
Right.
like the creation, the creative process can be like that, where, oh, I don't care. I'm just doing this. Like we did this track today, and, we're having fun. This cool sample, we're playing with different sounds, and now we have to finish the track. So now we almost have to switch our minds into
Hmm.
this other mode of
Mhm.
finishing. So being
Right.
aware of that and doing the best to improve those moments is everything. And that's when workflow comes, handy,
Yeah.
for you to be able to
Absolutely.
express yourself.
Awesome. Very
All
cool.
right, I,
What do you got there, Angel?
I got the
Yeah.
session. The only thing is I had it. I don't know why the audio movers is not working. I had to send you guys a new link. So I don't
Okay.
know.
Cool.
I think because I actually opened his session instead of keeping it and importing.
Hmm.
Okay.
So you guys should be able to pop that up.
Can you hit play for a second? Cool. I think I got it here. Sounds good.
You got it?
Yeah.
All right, let me do some screen sharing.
Cool.
All right, so Fed, he brought it back over to arrangement view. And here we are with our arrangement. So what I'll do is I'll probably flatten this so I'm able to control it because it's a frozen file. Flatten. And we'll hear this. So here, I'll just do, but I don't feel like doing any automation, so I'll just do it this way. I know I had this, so I didn't even have to flatten it. I don't know why I did that. Kind of got rid of his cheat code, his processing thing, but So here, what I'll do is. So, just an idea I have on the fly. I really like that. That's dope.
Reverse the sample. And,
Yeah, it reverses.
Do you think that sound good too if you like on that part when the reverse sample hits, maybe mute the pad, just the sample on the bass? I don't know. I know.
Yeah, that's dope. So, I mean,
Andrew in the chat says that beat is fuego.
Actually, I'll take that one.
I think probably the part from 65 to 73. I mean, if we were really doing it, that probably could be twice as long.
Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah. Maybe we will add, you know, another element or something on the next part. Maybe it could be that the bass comes actually on 73. Because you have the hi-hats coming in, that gives it a different thing. I don't know. We'll have to hear it context.
Actually, now that we do that, I almost feel like grabbing this and starting with a bass.
Yeah.
I love the rule when arranging. I just like this Max Martin thing, or it's not. No, it's not Max Martin. Is it a Max Martin thing? I think it's a Brian Eno thing of like bringing one ingredient at a time. I think it is Max Martin, of like just introducing one thing, and I always try to stick to that as much as possible. I think it's cool to just like that way you don't throw all the tricks into the, you know, into the situation all at once.
And it's also nice, I was going to say, adding to that, we do this a lot with Angels, like that the elements, I mean, here they might start at the bar line, but it's good to start before or after the bar line too, meaning like, so it's less obvious, like, oh, a new element is coming in. Maybe you can bring that element like a bar before sometimes and kind of creeps in. But yeah, that's like a really good way of seeing it, just like, you know, one element at a time.
it's just like trying to create space with what's there before I even try to add a different element. I try to maximize that because, you know, again, we have some pretty cool ingredients to work with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes actually even adding too many elements is going to be bad for the track. I think if you listen, I mean, a great example of the I Want to Be Your Lover by Prince, where the chorus is the same as the verse, but the more you utilize the same stuff over and over, I think you make the track way more cohesive, and it's better for the listener, I think, to hear what he's doing now, taking the sample, reversing it, that if we add another layer that is a new sound, I think it kind of gets you out of the mood that the track is providing. So I highly encourage everybody to try to work with, you know, even with Kanye, like, I don't know, Angel, you remember probably when he's like, don't use more than 4 elements, you know, ever. And I think it's all about doing what Angel's doing now, just really maximizing. We have a kick, a clap, hi-hat, the sample, a pad and a bass. That's like 6 things. Of course, the sample, we count it as a unit, but I think it's much more interesting to get creative with what you have than adding to it, which is the main impulse of new producers or even ourselves too, is just trying to overdo it and add and add and add. Try to subtract and use what you have more creatively. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
That's amazing because specifically on Yeezus, I believe it was, I was like, you could make this record on an 8-track. It was like, it's insane just because there's never more than, like you said, 4 things happening or whatever, which is awesome.
That's actually the example he gave us. That's actually
nice.
what he kept saying. He's like, it needs to be like 3 elements and vocal. I don't want to hear anything else. And it, again, those type of things really make you, they put you in a place where you really think about the song. You know, at the end of the day, we're in the, like, it's about making songs. You know, some people make the EDM. That's cool. That's different. But at least for what we do is we want to make a song and we want to leave room for that song. And we always have to think from that aspect of when is enough, you know, enough. I mean, and this is getting pretty close to the point of that. Like, we could do a couple more arrangement things. But as is, you could have a song that's written and then we could take that and produce, you know, and finish the song once we have the vocal. But it's always important to see production that way. It's like when the main ingredients are there, toss them in there. And Brian Eno has this thing that he wrote this thing for the Coldplay guys. And I remember one of the things that I saw, and it was something about just great ingredients and moving fast through them, you know, like get them out
like
the
an
kitchen.
Italian.
Cook like an Italian chef, you know, good ingredients to begin and quick through the kitchen. So, which is genius if you really think about it. It should feel, you know, obviously, you know, we've taken the time because of some of the technical stuff that we've been having and dealing with the uploading a Dropbox and blah, blah. But this would be a pretty fast process if we were in the room, you know.
Oh, yeah, right.
It'd be done. It's because we're not overthinking. I mean, I was thinking on the guitar, you know, early when we started, like, I want to do the chords and do it, but I'm like, no, it doesn't need it. The roads were doing it. Let's do this, and let's get it to a point where we could create the space for the songwriter to come in and do just that. And that's what, you know, once we have it in this view, we're able to look at the arrangement. We're able to see those pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now I'm just, you know, you guys saw how I reversed the sample, is just finding the gaps of where it sounds cool. So right there, let me take this. Okay. going to the next verse. Yeah, and this is pretty much almost there. We could keep adding stuff, and getting more.
This is something we will send to somebody also to, like, do your thing. You don't want to overcook it too. And sometimes, like, whoever is trying to get on the track might be one of our writers or an artist. They might change the arrangement completely and just chop our 2-track and do it on another way, and that's fine too. But I think, honestly, if we were doing it, probably the only thing we will add, maybe some transition sounds, or it's almost like building, drywall, where this is like, you build first and then you make all the details later.
Right.
So it's like we get all the big chunks how we want.
Yeah, the foundation.
Exactly, just the foundation is there, and then maybe if we need to add. And also you have to think the vocal, you never know, or when the vocal might leave space or be active. In general, it's always, at the same spots. People tend to do the same thing, but you never know. They might do like stop for a bar, and then okay, we put some in there, going with the vocal. I think our view, maybe some producers don't feel that way, but our view is always that the beat is at the service of the artist, and
yes,
and
absolutely
is the star of the show is always going to be, if you put in a vocal on a track, in general, that's going to be, all that matters. So you got to make sure that all the elements are just at the service of that performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is about the point where you get it to where you'd say, all right, let's like ship it off to a top liner or to somebody that we're working with or whatever.
Yeah.
Feedback, and then
or we might sit on it like this and move on to something else, open up something else, and then when you open this back up, you almost have a new take, and you almost hear and the arrangement and even some of the parts. Maybe you hear a pocket where you could do something cool with the hi-hat, or just little stuff like that. You start really getting the intricacies. I like doing that every time before we send anything, of doing the second listen after I, either listen to something, or as of late, I might jump on a quick video game and do like a quick Warzone thing, or, just to refresh or step out, go on a walk with my wife, and then come in and you completely hear this piece in a whole different light,
Right.
It's hard it's easy to get in a loop of working on something for a long time and thinking, oh, this is dope, and then it's not, just because you've been on it forever. So that's why it's important to, like Angel was saying, the cook like an Italian. It's like few ingredients and move fast, because I think if you move fast, a lot of times you can get just a basic idea like done, and then just move to something else. We do that all the time. We might work 3 ideas and we leave them be for a day, and then the next day you open it up. Oh, this one was amazing. This one not so good. The one that we thought it was trash is actually the best one. But you need to have that space. And sometimes, like I said, that's when working fast, I think, is really important, and having a system. Because if you spend a long time, let's say Angel was doing these hi-hats and he might spend, 20 minutes on that hi-hat. By the time he's done, like, your brain starts fucking up and you start thinking like, oh, this is so dope. The next day you're like, oh man, this is trash. But when you work really fast and move to the next thing, I think it allows you to reset, hit that reset button. Then the next day or an hour later, you come to it and it's like, oh, I know exactly what I have to do. I've seen producers, and I've done it myself in the past, but I've seen some people that is like, they go into this mode of working on a little detail for 2 hours, which it might be good. It might work for some people, but I always feel that the answer is so quick when you come in the next day. It takes you 5 minutes to simplify and do exactly what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Perspective is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah, for sure.
Guys, I think we've almost set a record for the length on a live stream on these for all the stay-at-home webinars we've been doing.
We apologize.
No, I can't thank you guys enough for taking all the time to do this and show us your process and let us watch it live like this. It's just amazing that we're able to watch you guys do what you do, even with internet issues and all. It's amazing to watch you guys work and share things back and forth and see how you feed off of each other and how each one of you complements the other and everything. This is great.
So, amazing. We're grateful. We're grateful, and we're grateful yeah, and I'm honestly, I'm grateful for uh Puremix and platforms alike that are just all about educating and bringing community together for the same, for improving each other. The fact that I have access to insight of like Andrew, and I could go in there and yeah, it's insane. You get to learn things um, that before you just didn't have access to. And it's only going to make you better just because Andrew's mixing something. I might take something from one of those videos and apply it here. And vice versa. You know what I mean? So grateful for you guys and for keeping stuff moving during this pandemic. I think the content you guys are pumping is amazing. It's entertaining. It's been funny at times.
Thank you.
I love the geek talk. I love it all, man. I think it's great. It's solid entertainment that is educating at the same time, and I think that's important to do during these times as well.
Thank you.
Love Puremix.
Yeah. So
Thank
I
you,
could
guys.
hit play one more time just to recap the track, just so you guys hear it. Yeah.
You know what? Actually, before you do that, do you got that original sample? The original inspiration for the sample that you created?
Yeah, I think I actually have it right here in this session.
Cool.
I just can't seem to understand what I have to say to make you realize that each and every day I live for you, girl.
So
Which brought us to Awesome. Nice. Man, incredible.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. I was just gonna add this comment, like in the time that we were talking and not hitting play, on that listen, like you guys saw me move a couple things that I heard that I didn't hear before. And it's the same way. That's why it's so important when you're creating and you're doing this, to always have what Fetch said in mind. It's like, this needs to complement that. Like, the main star is the vocal. It's not what we do. It's almost like this is just the car to get you there, and it just has to, that's really all it is. And stepping away is often good because you're able to hear small little details and spaces, and so yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you so much, man. What a good time.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you everybody in the chat too.
Cool. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if you guys revisit this in the future. Keep us updated.
No, for sure. We probably will.
Awesome.
We probably will. We could maybe do one last question. You want to pick, Mark, or something?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you. Let's see here. So, okay, here we go. Sorry for the pause there. So, this is cool. This is from Ryan Liptak. And Ryan says, as a producer, I find it rare that a track ends up exactly like I intended when starting, but the mistakes take ideas in a better or more creative direction than I could have initially imagined. When working at the level that you guys do you find more value in being able to execute concepts as you hear in your head, or relying on your creativity to let ideas morph into new territory?
You want to go ahead, Fed?
I'll say that probably both, Sometimes you might have a clear idea in your head of, oh, I hear this thing and I want to do it, and it might come out just like you want it. I mean, if you're very like, oh, this is it, I got to do it this way, which it happens sometimes, but I'll say that in general, it's all about, like, he was saying, like, where the journey is going to take you, and being open to let God in the room and just do what feels right at the time. And sometimes completely going against your initial idea, it tends to work pretty well too. I think it just really depends, but you have to be open. You have to be open to let things flow and not being attached to anything, but of course, sometimes, we might do a voice note with a guitar and that's exactly what it is. And when you hear the final version, it might be exactly that. So it goes both ways, but my advice would be to always leave the room open to go into different, places. And at the same time, sometimes it makes it, I mean, the only wrong thing about doing that is it can take you into making a shitload of ideas that you never finish, because every time you start, you go into a tangent and you always move into things. So sometimes you have to have a little bit of discipline into finishing stuff. I think finishing tracks, even it might not be something great, but just getting to finish it, it's gonna teach you a lot. Even that it might not be the right idea, but if you're making 10 ideas, try to at least finish, 2 or 3.
Right.
Because the act of finishing something is a completely different mindset, and it's also going to teach you little things. And now I think, because we've been doing this for so long, even at the start of the idea, we already envision in the end, like when we started, like we're like, oh, how this is going to sound pitch, and we need space for the 808s, and it's going to, like, we already thinking way ahead naturally, so.
Right. Yeah, and you touched on that earlier too, just about like leaving room for that to happen, and yeah, very cool.
It's good to leave room for error.
Yeah.
I think a lot of magical, that's what Ryan said, and even what Fed is speaking about, it's a lot of amazing things happen when you have mistakes like that. So it's good to think forward and think about where we're going with it the way we did, but also, the reverse thing, I heard it and but it could have been I accidentally reversed it, or even moved the sample maybe. Like, you always want room for those things, because those are the magical moments that come in and become brilliant pieces in the music journey, in the journey of the song.
Right.
Sometimes the first take is really good. We do that a lot of times because, we're both perfectionists, so we might want to re-record stuff, but even when we did this sample, I think it was like 2 takes on maybe every part, or maybe 1.
Yeah.
And it might be like, oh, let's go in and fix stuff. But sometimes it's good to really stick to that first idea and try to get good at that, at being good at a first take of different things, because there's a lot of magic there that you can't replicate. And it happens so many times with me, especially because I might have bad memory, and I might be messing with something, and Angel's like, yo, that was so dope. I'm like, dude, I have no idea what I just did. And we might lose something forever. But if we're recording and that's okay, cool, we can go back to it, and that's the coolest thing I did. Then if not, you start thinking about it, and the magic can go away. So
Right, right. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that was an interesting thing in the sample too, because you really did just keep on moving past it, and it wasn't a thing of like, let's tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak because we're going to use this throughout the whole track. It just was what it was, and
yeah, I mean, the
aesthetically, I guess
computer
it
was
allowed it
messing
to.
up. It's like,
Yeah,
that's the reality that you have to accept at that moment. And I
yeah,
think this is the funniest part too, that, and it happens to every producer, I bet, that sometimes I turn something on and it's not working, and I'm fucking frustrated because it's like, oh,
yeah.
why is this not working? And nowadays, instead of like really fixing it, I just move on. Like,
Good for
okay,
you.
I don't supposed to be using this thing, you
Yeah,
know, and I'm
right,
not gonna fight it. It's almost like you trust that God is telling you, like, don't go that way.
right, right,
And
right.
I think honestly that can apply to anything. I'm sometimes to mixing. I remember this funny thing with Jimmy Douglas, that he was mixing the track, and I'll see like he picked a plugin, and then the weirdest plugin on the weirdest thing, and I'm thinking, what is his logic behind using this plugin on that? And then I ask him, he's like, oh, I just pick random plugins. I don't ever think like, oh, I need an EQ or compression. I usually just go and open the folder and click, and whatever comes out, that's the plugin that stays. And I was like, that's so dope, because like that means like he will work making that plugin. Like, let's say he's putting, I don't know, reverb on a bass,
Yeah,
and he's like, okay, I got to figure out how to make that reverb on bass work, because Brian Eno talks about this all the time. He's the king of like random music generators and things like that. And
yeah,
actually, I've been
yeah.
experimenting with that on Ableton, because there's a lot of ways to do that.
Nice.
That sometimes is cool to do random stuff and turn that into something. It doesn't
Right.
have to come from you all the time. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but yeah.
No, that's amazing. Also, Jimmy Douglas could probably use a reverb as a compressor.
Yeah, I mean, he'll make it work, man. He's amazing. He could just like get the weirdest, and I don't think he always do that, but I've seen him do it a bunch of times, and I thought it was so much fun. Why he will get incredible sounds, because he's not thinking from a tech. Again, he's playing and having fun and being like a little kid. Oh, what if I do this?
Yeah,
And I think sometimes, honestly, I feel a lot of us, we don't do that enough, and that's the other side of all this. It's nice to see the tutorials and things, but I think that's why the Puremix thing is great, because you get to see actual people making music.
hmm,
Because with a tutorial, they might say, "Oh, always high pass, your guitar," or things like that, and
hmm,
I mean, it's bullshit. I mean, you can breaking the rules is what's gonna make it sound amazing.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you'll be surprised. The best people are usually the less technical people. Uh, you know, Sometimes
yeah,
there's people that are super technical and great, but I think all the masters, they're not very knowledgeable of like what an EQ does. They just
Yeah.
have a good sense of what sounds good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's good
I
to keep it
mean,
that way. I feel like when you're a kid, when you're a baby, you learn, Fed, we were having a conversation about Riley the other day, how he's
Uh-huh.
just touching and grabbing stuff. And that's how I feel we got to do. It's like, what happens if I grab this and squeeze this?
mm,
And that's how you got to do. That's what what he just mentioned about Jimmy Douglas. It's like, just approach it freely. Otherwise,
yeah,
you're just boxing yourself in. It's like, how can I
yeah,
make that reverb compress the bass? It's almost that
right,
approach of just, dude, just have fun, man.
right,
It's all
right,
fun.
yeah,
That's the way you create moments. That's how you learn. That's how you, as a child, that when you're developing, that's how you learn. If you squeeze the dog's tail too hard, he's probably gonna go and then you're like, okay, I don't know if I should do that, but that was cool. That's the
right,
way you learn. And I think keeping that element into creating, yes, there's certain things that you could always go back to your fundamentals,
yes,
but you
yeah,
can't always be free like that. And it's good to not be scared of approaching, creating, make whatever it is,
yeah.
from that aspect.
That's when it gets tedious too. Is when you're just hyper focused on the technical all the time. Then it's like, it's just not. It's not why you started doing it. you know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of genres.
C major
Yeah,
chord.
yeah, but
Yeah.
even genres, I feel like a lot of genres came out of like breaking rules of what was that. They were like, oh, they do it like that, we're gonna do it like this, and you know, grunge and etc. That's the way you stay evolving and you keep this thing fun by trying new things.
Yeah.
And not going by the book or anything. Again, we could always go back home. We could always,
Right.
that's the whole thing of Kanye, you know, limiting us to horns and vocals for 2 whole weeks. We were kind of like, really? Is this really? But then after we realized, like, he was stretching you to bring colors from over there. Yeah, I'm just ranting now, but yeah, it's just have fun, man. That's
awesome.
That's what we're doing. This is fun.
Very cool, man. Thank you guys so much. Can't thank you enough. Hope to do more with you soon. And yeah, cool. You guys stay safe and all that, and we'll see you next time. For everybody watching, thank you for hanging in there with us for over 3 hours, guys. Thank you again. And
thank you. Love everybody.
Tomorrow we're back with Alan Meyerson. It's going to be insane. And on Friday is Joel Hamilton. So we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.